Hey there, if you like this journey into ancient tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let's ease into a story from the shadows of history, where the rhythms of life flowed as gently as the Ganges under the stars in the heart of 3rd century BCE India, amid the bustling streets of Pataliputra, a city woven from brick and dreams. There lived men whose days unfolded in quiet harmony with the earth's gentle giants. Picture this: the sun rising like a soft whisper over the riverbanks, casting a golden haze on the muddy waters where elephants swayed in their morning baths. These were the keepers, clad in simple cotton dhotis that fluttered like whispers in the breeze, their bare feet sinking into the cool, damp earth as they tended to their massive charges. No grand battles or clashing armies colored their world. Instead, it was a tapestry of serene routines, where the bond between man and beast wove a story as enduring as the ancient banyan trees that lined the paths. Imagine the scene at dawn, when the air carried the faint, earthy scent of wet soil and foliage, mingled with the musky aroma of elephant skin. The keepers, with their weathered hands and steady gazes, would approach their wards with a calm that spoke of years of unspoken understanding. One might kneel by the river's edge, dipping a rough cloth into the swirling, chocolate-brown water, its surface rippling with the reflections of palm fronds overhead. As he gently scrubbed the elephant's broad back, the great beast would trumpet softly, a low, resonant sound that echoed like a distant lullaby through the mist. Not a harsh call, but a contented rumble, as if sharing a secret with the keeper alone. These trumpets, soft and melodic, blended with the gentle splash of water and the rustle of leaves, creating a symphony that soothed the soul, inviting one to drift into peaceful contemplation. The life of these handlers was one of quiet devotion, far removed from the opulent courts of emperors. In Pataliputra, a thriving hub under the Mauryan realm, the keepers found their purpose in the shadows of the city's grandeur. Historical whispers from Ashokan edicts, inscribed on stone pillars across the land, remind us of a time when rulers emphasized kindness to all creatures, urging a path of non-violence that extended even to the wild beasts. Though these edicts rarely named the everyday guardians like our elephant keepers, they painted a picture of a society that valued the welfare of animals, perhaps inspiring the handlers' tender care. Archaeological reports from sites near the ancient city uncover remnants of stables and watering holes, suggesting that these men worked in spaces designed for comfort, with troughs carved from stone and shaded enclosures where elephants could rest under the canopy of broad-leaved trees. Each day began with a simple ritual of feeding. The keepers would gather armfuls of fresh bamboo shoots and sugarcane, their fingers brushing against the rough, green stalks that crunched underfoot. The elephants, with their intelligent eyes and swaying trunks, would reach out delicately, wrapping the tender shoots in a grasp as precise as a child's hand clutching a toy. There was a subtle wit in these moments, a gentle humor in how an elephant might playfully nudge its keeper with its trunk, as if to say, "Hurry up, my friend. The sun waits for no one." The keeper would chuckle softly, his voice a murmur lost in the breeze, and offer an extra treat, fostering a bond that went beyond duty. This connection, built on trust and routine, was the heart of their existence, a silent partnership where words were unnecessary and gestures spoke volumes. As the morning progressed, the keepers led their elephants along the river paths, the muddy banks squelching under heavy footsteps. The water lapped at the edges, cool and invigorating, carrying the faint scent of lotus blooms that floated lazily on the surface. Sensory details like the warm touch of sunlight on skin, the gritty feel of sand between toes, and the rhythmic sway of the elephant's steps created a hypnotic rhythm, one that lulled the mind into a state of tranquil reflection. In these hours, the keepers might pause to inspect their charges, running hands over thick, leathery hides that felt like ancient scrolls, checking for any signs of discomfort. If an elephant showed a hint of unease, the keeper would hum a soft tune, a melody passed down through generations, its notes weaving through the air like threads of silk. Yet, amid this peaceful tableau, there lingers a mystery that adds a layer of intrigue to their story. The unrecorded names of these devoted men, unlike the emperors and generals etched into stone inscriptions, the elephant keepers remain anonymous, their identities lost to the sands of time. Archaeological digs in Pataliputra have unearthed tools and artifacts, simple tools like wooden prods and clay pots, but no names, no personal tales. It's as if history conspired to veil them in shadow, preserving their legacy in the echoes of elephant calls rather than ink on parchment. This enigma invites a gentle curiosity, a subtle wit in how these unsung heroes shaped the world without seeking acclaim. Their lives a testament to the quiet power of everyday bonds. As the day warmed, the keepers would guide their elephants to shaded groves where the air grew cooler under the dense foliage. The scent of wildflowers and damp moss filled the space, and the soft crunch of leaves underfoot provided a natural bed for rest. Here, they might share a moment of repose, the keeper leaning against the elephant's side, feeling the steady rise and fall of its breath like a comforting heartbeat. Sensory richness abounded. The taste of fresh river water on parched lips, the sound of birdsong weaving through the trumpets, and the visual tapestry of sunlight filtering through leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. These details, drawn from reports of ancient settlements, paint a picture of a life attuned to nature's rhythms, where every action was a dance of mutual respect. In the afternoons, as the sun climbed higher, the keepers turned to maintenance tasks, oiling the elephant's skin with herbal pastes that carried the aromatic blend of turmeric and sandalwood. The mixture, mixed in earthen bowls, released a soothing fragrance that lingered in the air, calming both man and beast. One could almost feel the warmth of the paste as it was applied, its texture smooth and cooling against the heat of the day. Archaeological evidence from Mauryan sites suggests such practices were common, ensuring the elephant's health and longevity, a nod to the era's advanced understanding of animal care as echoed in Ashokan principles. Evenings brought a sense of closure, with the keepers leading their charges back to the stables. As the sky blushed with sunset hues, the river's surface turned to liquid gold, reflecting the fading light, and the air grew crisp with the promise of night. Here, in the dimming glow, the bond deepened, a quiet companionship that whispered of shared solitude. The elephants would settle down, their massive forms curling into rest, while the keepers lingered nearby, perhaps sharing stories with fellow handlers in hushed tones, their voices blending with the nocturnal chorus of crickets and owls. This glimpse into the life of a Mauryan elephant keeper in Pataliputra reveals a world of serene dedication. Far from the myths of warfare, it's a reminder that history's true magic lies in these overlooked narratives, where human and animal hearts beat in harmony. As we part ways for now, let this gentle tale linger like a dream, drawing you toward the next segment, where we'll uncover more whispers from the past. Sleep well, and may the soft trumpets of elephants guide your rest. Word count 1,500 in the hushed halls of Pataliputra's ancient palaces, where the air hung thick with the sweet whisper of sandalwood incense. Emperor Ashoka sat upon his throne of polished ebony and ivory. The year was 260 BCE, and the city breathed with the rhythm of a great river, its stone walls etched with carvings of lotus blooms and tranquil elephants, their forms softened by the golden glow of oil lamps. Silk robes draped his frame, a cascade of deep crimson and gold that rustled gently with each measured breath, as if the fabric itself echoed the emperor's newfound serenity. Around him, courtiers moved like shadows, their footsteps muffled by thick rugs woven from distant lands, while the faint chime of distant bells blended with the murmur of scribes etching his words into stone. Ashoka, once a warrior king, had turned his gaze inward, embracing the gentle path of Buddhism that now shaped his every decree. In these quiet chambers, he issued edicts that flowed like streams through the empire, promoting a doctrine of Dhamma righteousness, compassion, and harmony. The air carried the subtle scent of jasmine from the gardens beyond, where peacocks called softly in the twilight, their feathers a living tapestry against the cool marble floors. He spoke not of battles or conquests, but of the welfare of all beings, his voice a soothing cadence that lulled the assembly into thoughtful repose. Let kindness be the pillar of our realm, he might have said, his words drawn from the inscriptions he commanded to be carved across the land, reminders etched in rock as enduring as the mountains. One such edict, found on the great pillars of sandstone and polished granite, spoke of the importance of moral living urging subjects to honor their parents, respect elders, and treat animals with the same care one might offer a cherished guest in the palace. Ashoka often paused to contemplate these principles, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings on the wall's elephants entwined with vines, their trunks raised in eternal salute. The fragrance of sandalwood grew stronger as braziers were lit, casting a warm haze that softened the edges of reality, inviting a sense of peace that wrapped around the soul like a well-worn shawl. It was here, in these moments of reflection, that the emperor's reforms took shape, transforming a vast empire into a tapestry of benevolence. Under his guidance, the Mauryan realm blossomed with Buddhist ideals, as missions of monks and scholars ventured forth to spread the teachings. Ashoka established hospitals not just for people, but for creatures of the wild, where the soft rustle of leaves and the trickle of water from stone fountains created a haven of healing. In Pataliputra, the palaces echoed with the low hum of discussions, where advisors gathered in circles, their voices blending like the notes of a distant flute. The emperor, in his silk robes, would listen with a subtle wit, perhaps remarking on the folly of unchecked ambition with a gentle smile, as if sharing a private jest with the universe. What is a kingdom? He might muse, if not a garden tended with care, where every seed of kindness yields a harvest of contentment. Yet, amid this tranquility, there lingered the mystery of the Sanchai Stupa's relics, an enigma that whispered through the corridors like a breeze, carrying secrets from afar. High on a hill in the heart of the empire, the stupa stood as a monumental gateway to the unknown, its dome crowned with a stone umbrella that caught the first light of dawn. Legend spoke of relics enshrined within perhaps fragments of the Buddha's own remains, or sacred ashes that held the essence of enlightenment. Ashoka, in his wisdom, had overseen the construction of such sites, drawing from the edicts that detailed his devotion. One inscription, carved on a pillar near the palace, hinted at these treasures. Let the relics be guarded as the light of truth, for they hold the path to liberation. But what exactly lay hidden in Sanchai's depths? Some whispered of a casket containing the Buddha's bones, placed there in a ritual lost to time, while others pondered if the relics were mere symbols, their power residing in the faith they inspired. In the palace, as the evening deepened, Ashoka would retire to his private chambers, where the air was perfumed with the earthy aroma of myrrh and the faint tang of polished stone. He sat cross-legged on a cushion of soft velvet, his silk robes pooling around him like pooled moonlight, contemplating the stupa's mystery. The carvings on the walls depicted scenes of devotion, figures in meditative poses with eyes closed in eternal calm, their forms illuminated by the flicker of candles that danced like fireflies in the gloom. It was a puzzle that added a layer of intrigue to his reforms. For while the edicts promoted clarity and virtue, the relics remained veiled, a subtle reminder that not all truths could be etched in stone. Perhaps, in a moment of quiet wit, Ashoka envisioned the stupa as a great riddle, one that invited seekers to look beyond the surface, much like the emperor himself had done after his transformative awakening. His reforms extended to the very fabric of daily life, ensuring that the empire's vast network of roads, lined with shade trees and rest houses, became paths of peace rather than conquest. Travelers spoke of wells dug for the thirsty and groves planted for the weary, all decreed by Ashoka's hand. In Pataliputra, the palace gardens burst with blooms frangipani and champa flowers, releasing their delicate scents into the air, while bees hummed lazily among the petals. The emperor's edicts, distributed on rock faces and pillars, emphasized the cessation of animal sacrifices, a policy that brought a hush to the once bustling altars. Let no living being suffer for the sake of ritual. The inscriptions read, their words flowing with the grace of a river smoothing stones over time. This shift fostered a society where compassion reigned, and even the simplest interactions carried an undercurrent of gentleness, as if the entire realm had been lulled into a collective dream of harmony. As the years unfolded, Ashoka's devotion deepened, and he commissioned more stupas and viharas, places of worship that dotted the landscape like stars in the night sky. The Sanchai stupa, in particular, held a fascination that no one could fully unravel. Some ancient texts, aligned with the edicts, suggested that the relics were placed there by Ashoka himself, transported from sacred sites, with ceremonies involving chants and offerings of rice and flowers. Yet the exact nature of these relics remained elusive. A casket, perhaps, adorned with gems that glimmered like forgotten stars, or scrolls inscribed with verses that held the key to ultimate peace. This mystery lent a poetic allure to his reign, a subtle thread of wonder woven into the tapestry of his Buddhist pursuits. In the palace, the routine of court life continued with a soothing rhythm, the days marked by the tolling of bells and the aroma of freshly prepared meals, spiced lentils, and breads baked in clay ovens, their warmth seeping into the stone halls. Ashoka, ever the contemplative ruler, would walk the corridors at dusk, his silk robes brushing against the cool pillars, pausing to admire the carvings that depicted the life of the Buddha. With a detached wit, he might reflect on how even the greatest mysteries, like those of Sanchai, served to remind humanity of its impermanence, a gentle nudge toward enlightenment rather than a source of fear. Through his edicts, Ashoka sought to build an empire not of might, but of moral strength, where the welfare of the people was paramount. One pillar inscription detailed the appointment of Dhamma Mahamatras, officers tasked with promoting virtue, their duties extending to the remote corners of the realm. In Pataliputra, these reforms manifested in public gatherings, where teachings were shared under the shade of banyan trees, the air filled with the sound of rustling leaves and the distant call of birds. The emperor's influence created a legacy that endured, a calming wave that rippled through generations as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace grounds. Ashoka's reign drew toward its close, an era of profound change wrapped in the embrace of peace. The mystery of the Sanshai relics, ever present, hinted at stories yet to unfold, bridging the past to the future in a seamless flow. And so, as the incense faded into the night, one might imagine the emperor's spirit lingering, a soothing presence that whispered of continuity, ready to transition into tales of what lay beyond in the hushed embrace of the ancient forests near Sanshai, where the earth whispered secrets through its roots. A great stone dome rose like a slumbering giant against the fading light of dusk. The stupa stood sentinel, its weathered bricks softened by centuries of monsoon rains, and the gentle caress of wind swept leaves. Monks in saffron robes, their forms as still as the ancient banyan trees, patrolled the perimeter with measured steps, their presence a quiet vow against the encroaching shadows. The air carried the faint scent of damp earth and wild jasmine, mingling with the distant echo of a peacock's call, creating a rhythm that lulled the soul into a state of serene contemplation. These guardians, their heads shaved and eyes half closed in perpetual meditation, moved like ghosts through the undergrowth, their bare feet brushing against dew-kissed grass that released a soft, earthy aroma with each step. The forest around them was alive with subtle sounds. The rustle of leaves as a breeze wandered through the canopy, the occasional drip of water from a hidden spring, and the low hum of insects that seemed to harmonize with the monk's murmured chants. One might imagine a young monk, his robe catching on a thorny vine, pausing to free it with a wry smile, as if the forest itself played a gentle jest on his devotion. For in this place, time unfolded slowly, like a lotus blooming under the moon's watchful gaze. The Sanshai stupa, built in the 3rd century BCE, held within its core a mystery that had drawn seekers for generations. It was said that relics, sacred remnants from the early days of Buddhism, lay enshrined deep inside, protected by layers of stone and the unyielding faith of those who tended it. Archaeological reports from excavations in the 19th century, drawing from the meticulous surveys of the Archaeological Survey of India, suggest that these relics might include fragments of bone or ash, possibly belonging to revered figures from the Buddha's era. Yet the true origins remained veiled, a puzzle wrapped in the silence of history. The stupa was not merely a monument. It was a repository of the unknown, where the line between legend and fact blurred like mist over the nearby Betwa River. As the monks circled the structure, their lanterns casting a warm, flickering glow that danced across the carved gateways, one could sense the weight of unanswered questions. What exactly had been placed within this dome? Reports indicate that stupas like Sanshai were often built to house relics of enlightened beings, perhaps disciples, or even the Buddha himself, though no definitive proof emerged from the digs. The mystery deepened with the realization that these relics were not always what they seemed. Some might have been symbolic offerings, fragments of a greater spiritual narrative lost to time. In the soft light, the stone surfaces seemed to breathe, their intricate carvings of lotuses and wheels evoking a sense of peace, while the faint echo of footsteps on the packed earth added a rhythmic undertone, like a heartbeat echoing through the ages. Imagine, if you will, a monk settling into his nightly vigil, the cool stone of the stupa pressing against his palm as he traced its curves. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers that unfolded their petals in the darkness, releasing a subtle fragrance that mingled with the resinous smoke from a distant fire. It was in these moments that the mystery took on a life of its own, whispering through the trees. Historical accounts, pieced together from inscriptions and the findings at Sanchai, reveal that such stupas were constructed as acts of piety, possibly to commemorate events or individuals from the Buddha's time. Yet the unknowns persisted. Were the relics authentic? Or had they been added later by devout followers seeking to enhance the site's sanctity? The archaeology hinted at multiple phases of construction, with relics potentially interred during expansions in the centuries that followed. But the core enigma remained untouched, like a hidden gem beneath the soil. The forest, with its canopy filtering the starlight into a tapestry of shadows, provided a perfect backdrop for such contemplation. Leaves rustled softly, as if sharing their own secrets, while the distant hoot of an owl added a note of gentle intrigue. The monks, ever watchful, spoke little, their conversations limited to soft exchanges about the day's observations, perhaps a new vine creeping over the stupa's base, or the way the morning sun glinted off the stone, casting illusions of movement. There was a subtle wit in their observations, a quiet acknowledgement that the mysteries of the world, much like the relics, were not meant to be fully unraveled. One monk might muse, with a faint smile, that the stupa guarded its treasures as stubbornly as the river guarded its depths, flowing onward without revealing all its hidden currents. As dawn approached, the air grew crisp, carrying the fresh scent of dew settling on the grass and the faint, earthy tang of moss-covered stones. The relic's origins, as per the reports, could trace back to the early Buddhist communities that flourished in central India, where such sites served as focal points for pilgrimage and reflection. Yet the unknowns fueled endless speculation. Had these items been brought from afar, perhaps from the sacred groves of Bodh Gaya, or were they local offerings, imbued with the essence of the region's spiritual heritage? Excavations uncovered items like beads and seals, alongside potential relic caskets, suggesting a complex history of devotion and preservation. The mystery lay not just in what was found, but in what remained concealed prompting a sense of wonder that lingered like the echo of a chant fading into the night. In the quiet hours, the monks would gather, their robes swaying gently in the breeze that carried whispers through the trees. The stone of the stupa, warm from the day's sun, retained a comforting heat, and the soft padding of their feet on the forest floor created a soothing cadence, like waves lapping at a distant shore. Sensory details abounded. The cool touch of the air on exposed skin, the subtle crunch of leaves underfoot, and the faint, metallic tang of the river in the distance. These elements wove a narrative of tranquility, where the mystery of the relics became a meditative focal point, drawing the mind inward. Historical examples from similar sites, such as the nearby Barhut Stupa, offered parallels. Relics there had been linked to early Buddhist texts. Yet Sanchai's own story stood apart, its enigmas unique and unresolved. One could envision a monk, his eyes closed in focus, sensing the stupa's pulse through the vibrations of the earth. The rustling leaves provided a natural symphony, their movements a reminder of the impermanence that shrouded the relic's true nature. Reports from the excavations spoke of sealed chambers, their contents suggesting a deliberate curation of the sacred. But the passage of time had eroded clear answers. Perhaps the relics were fragments of a greater whole, symbols of enlightenment that transcended physical form. In this calming rhythm, the mystery unfolded not as a puzzle to solve, but as a companion in the night, offering solace in its very elusiveness. As the stars began to fade with the approach of morning, the forest exhaled a final sigh, its leaves settling into stillness. The monks, their vigils complete, retreated to their simple dwellings, leaving the stupa to its solitary watch. Yet, in the heart of this ancient place, the mystery of the relics endured, a gentle enigma that beckoned further exploration. And as the first light crept through the trees, one might feel a subtle pull toward what lay beyond, where other tales of wonder awaited in the unfolding dawn. In the hushed glow of twilight, where the ancient stones of a Mauryan palace rose like silent guardians against the Indian sky, a governor settled into his world of measured elegance. It was the 3rd century BCE, an era when the empire's vast reach extended like a vast tapestry, woven with threads of authority and abundance. Here, in chambers carved from enduring rock, life unfolded with a rhythm as steady as the Ganges' flow. Far from the clamor of distant frontiers, the air carried whispers of spice and sandalwood, inviting one to linger in the soft embrace of prosperity, where duties blended seamlessly with delight. The governor, robed in layers of shimmering silk that caught the light like ripples on a pond, moved through his domain with the grace of a seasoned navigator. These garments, dyed in hues of deep crimson and gold, were more than mere cloth. They were symbols of the empire's opulence, imported from distant lands, and tailored to fit the stature of men entrusted with vast provinces. As he dined in the grand hall, the stone walls echoed faintly with the clink of silver vessels and the murmur of attendants. The table before him groaned under the weight of feasts, steaming platters of curried lentils, fragrant with cumin and coriander, roasted meats glazed in honey and turmeric, and fruits plucked from orchards tended by skilled hands. The aromas wove through the air, a symphony of warmth that beckoned the senses, evoking the earth's bounty under the watchful eye of the empire. Oil lamps flickered gently along the walls, their flames dancing like fireflies in the dim expanse, casting a golden haze that softened the edges of reality. Each lamp, filled with pressed sesame oil, burned with a steady glow, illuminating frescoes of mythical beasts and floral patterns etched into the stone. The light played across the governor's face, highlighting the fine lines of experience etched by years of oversight. He savored his meal, not in haste, but with deliberate pauses, allowing the flavors to unfold like a story. A hint of ginger lingered on his tongue, paired with the subtle crunch of fresh pomegranates, their seeds bursting with tart sweetness. It was a life of refined indulgence, where every bite and breath spoke of the Mauryan zenith, an empire built on the pillars of administration and abundance, as decreed in the edicts of its rulers. In those edicts, inscribed on pillars and rocks across the land, lay the blueprint for such governance. They spoke of officials who must uphold Dharma righteousness in all affairs, ensuring the welfare of the people through fair taxes, just laws, and the maintenance of roads and irrigation. For the governor, this meant overseeing granaries brimming with harvests, their earthy scents of barley and wheat mingling with the palace air. He would dictate letters on palm leaf scrolls, their ink derived from soot and gum, carrying directives to village heads about equitable distribution of resources. Yet, amid this structured splendor, there was a quiet wit to his existence, a subtle irony in how the weight of empire rested so lightly on shoulders swathed in silk. One might chuckle inwardly at the thought of a man commanding armies and accounts, while reclining on cushions stuffed with soft cotton, the fabric whispering against his skin like a secret shared in the night. The palace itself was a marvel, its stones hewn from quarries far away and fitted with precision that spoke of masterful craftsmanship. Cool floors of polished granite soothed the feet after long hours in the sun-baked courtyards, where fountains trickled water drawn from deep wells, their sprays carrying the fresh scent of minerals. In the evenings, as the heat of the day faded, the governor would retire to his private quarters, where braziers of frankincense smoldered, filling the space with a resinous perfume that evoked distant trade routes. The walls, adorned with intricate carvings of lotuses and elephants, not the living beasts of the wild, but stylized forms frozen in stone, added a touch of whimsy to the solemnity. Here, in this cocoon of luxury, time seemed to stretch, each moment a gentle wave lapping at the shores of duty. Yet, even in this haven of opulence, shadows lingered. The governor's days were punctuated by the arrival of envoys bearing news from the provinces. Their reports delivered in hushed tones under the flickering lamps. These missives, sealed with wax imprinted by official stamps, detailed the flow of goods and the enforcement of edicts that promoted harmony and productivity. One such edict, carved on a pillar in a nearby city, reminded officials to treat all subjects with kindness, forbidding harsh punishments and encouraging the planting of medicinal herbs. The governor, ever mindful, ensured that his own gardens flourished with basil and aloe, their leaves releasing a crisp, herbal aroma when brushed against. It was a life balanced on the edge of power and benevolence, where the subtle wit lay in the contrast between the governor's lofty position and the everyday simplicities he oversaw. As nights deepened, the palace transformed into a realm of serene reflection. The governor might sit by an open window, the distant calls of night birds blending with the rustle of leaves, allowing the cool breeze to carry in scents of blooming jasmine. These moments offered a pause, a gentle reminder that even in grandeur, there was a rhythm to existence, like the steady beat of a distant drum echoing through the hills. His attendants, dressed in simpler linens, moved with quiet efficiency, serving chilled infusions of cardamom and mint to refresh the palate. The drinks, drawn from earthenware jars cooled in underground cellars, provided a soothing contrast to the day's warmth, their flavors mingling on the tongue like an unspoken poem. But woven into this tapestry of splendor was a thread of mystery, one that has puzzled scholars through the ages. The records of the governor's meticulous ledgers of accounts, decrees, and correspondences have vanished from history's grasp. These documents, once stored in sealed chests within the palace vaults, detailed the intricacies of administration with the precision of a master weaver. Yet they slipped away, perhaps lost to the erosions of time or the whims of fate, leaving only fragments in the edicts and scattered inscriptions. One might imagine them hidden in some forgotten chamber, their pages yellowed and brittle, carrying the faint scent of aged parchment and ink. The enigma lies in their absence, a subtle puzzle that adds a layer of intrigue to the Mauryan legacy. For without them, we glimpse only shadows of the governor's full influence. Was it the river's flood that swept them away, or perhaps a deliberate erasure by successors seeking to rewrite the narrative? The question lingers like a half-remembered dream, inviting quiet speculation. In the morning light, as the first rays kissed the stone facades, the governor would rise to another day of oversight. He might walk through the palace gardens, the dew-kissed petals of marigolds releasing their earthy fragrance underfoot, contemplating the edict's call for environmental stewardship. These spaces, alive with the buzz of bees and the flutter of butterflies, embodied the empire's harmony with nature, a gentle nod to the sustainable practices that sustained its wealth. The silk of his robes rustled softly, a constant companion in his reflections, reminding him of the privileges entwined with responsibility. Through it all, the opulence never waned, It was a constant, like the stars above. Evenings often ended with musical interludes, where stringed instruments played melodies that drifted like smoke from the lamps, their notes carrying hints of wit in their playful rhythms. The governor, with a knowing smile, would listen, appreciating the irony of commanding an empire while being serenaded by tunes that spoke of ephemeral joys. As the night waned, the air grew cooler, the spices' aromas fading into a peaceful hush, leaving only the soft glow of lamps to guide thoughts inward. And so, as the lamps dimmed and the palace settled into silence, one might wonder what tales the next dawn would bring, where the threads of history weave into new patterns, ready to unfold in whispers of the past. In the soft haze of dawn along the ancient banks of the Yamuna River, where the waters whispered secrets to the reeds, Mauryan elephant keepers stirred from their modest thatched shelters, clad in simple dhotis of coarse cotton, their bodies marked by the faint dust of the earth. These handlers moved with a quiet rhythm, as if the world itself were still half asleep. The air carried the first light of the 3rd century BCE, a time when empires rose and fell on the strength of these mighty beasts, and the keepers' lives unfolded in patterns etched by necessity and tradition. As the sun's gentle rays kissed the river's surface, the keepers gathered their tools, bamboo poles smoothed by years of use, baskets woven from river reeds, and ropes of twisted jute, their bare feet pressed into the cool, damp soil, leaving faint impressions that would soon be washed away by the morning tide. One by one, they approached the elephant enclosures, simple wooden barriers reinforced with stakes, where the great animals stirred with soft, rumbling grunts that echoed like distant thunder. These sounds, deep and resonant, blended with the gentle splash of water lapping at the shore, creating a symphony that soothed the soul and masked the day's demands. The first task was always the bathing, a ritual that began as the stars faded. The keepers waded into the shallow waters, the river's cool embrace sending ripples across their skin, a refreshing contrast to the night's lingering chill. Elephants, their hides gray and textured like ancient bark, lumbered forward with ponderous grace, their trunks swaying like inquisitive serpents. One keeper, perhaps named Arjuna in the tales passed down through generations, would cup his hands and splash water over the massive flanks, the droplets glistening in the dawn light. The elephants trumpeted softly, a sound like a contented sigh, as the water cascaded down, carrying away the dust and sweat of the previous day. The scent of wet earth and fresh foliage filled the air, mingling with the faint, musky odor of the beasts themselves, a reminder of their wild origins tamed by human hands. Feeding followed, a moment of communion by the river's edge. The keepers had risen early to forage, selecting tender shoots of bamboo and armfuls of grass from the nearby meadows, where dew still clung to the blades like tiny pearls. They carried these offerings in large, woven baskets, the weight balanced on their shoulders as they returned to to the water's side. Here, under the shade of sprawling banyan trees, whose leaves rustled in the breeze, the elephants were fed with deliberate care. A keeper might hold out a bundle of greens, his doties hitched up to avoid the mud, while the elephant's trunk, flexible and precise, curled around the food with a whisper of movement. The crunch of leaves being ground between massive molars created a rhythmic backdrop, punctuated by the occasional spray of water as an elephant dipped its trunk for a drink. The handlers spoke in low, murmuring tones, their words a mix of commands and endearments. As if sharing secrets with old friends, there was a subtle wit in their interactions. For even in this labor, a keeper might chuckle softly at how the elephants seemed to demand the choicest morsels, their eyes twinkling with what could only be described as knowing patience. Midday brought a lull, when the sun climbed high and the heat shimmered off the river like a veil of gold. The keepers retreated to shaded spots where they rested on mats of dried grass, sharing simple meals of roti and lentils prepared over open fires. The flames crackled softly, releasing the aroma of spices that danced on the warm air, while the elephants swayed gently, their ears flapping to ward off flies with a sound like soft applause. In these quieter hours, the handlers might oil the elephant's skin with extracts from neem leaves, their hands moving in slow, circular motions that evoked a mother's touch. The oil's earthy scent mingled with the river's freshness, creating a cocoon of calm that belied the empire's vast demands. These routines, though unvarying, held a mystery in their unrecorded nature schedules, whispered from one generation to the next, never etched in stone or scroll, leaving modern eyes to wonder at the gaps in history's tapestry. How did these keepers know precisely when to rise, or which path to take, without the crutch of written plans? Perhaps it was the elephants themselves, with their innate sense of time, that guided the day, a silent partnership lost to the ages. As the afternoon waned, the routines shifted to maintenance and light training. The keepers led the elephants along the riverbanks, their doties fluttering in the breeze like flags of devotion. They practiced commands, using gentle prods from bamboo poles to encourage steps or turns, all while the water's murmur provided a soothing counterpoint. An elephant might lower its head for a handler to check its tusks, the smooth ivory cool under probing fingers, or pause to trumpet a low note that reverberated through the air. Sensory details abounded. The squish of mud between toes, the faint tang of salt from the river's minerals, and the warm breath of the beasts as they exhaled in rhythmic puffs. Yet woven into this was a subtle enigma, the unrecorded schedules that archaeologists piece together from fragments of pottery and tools unearthed along these very banks. Reports from sites like those near the Ganges speak of similar routines, inferred from the wear on ancient implements, but the exact timing remains elusive, a puzzle that hints at oral traditions as fluid as the river itself. Evenings arrived with a golden glow, the sky streaked in hues of orange and pink that reflected off the water's surface. The keepers guided the elephants back to their enclosures, securing them with ropes that creaked softly in the fading light. A final feeding ensued, perhaps with fruits gathered from nearby orchards, their juices sweet and sticky on the handler's fingers. The elephants settled down, their massive forms curling into rest, grunts subsiding into deep, even breaths that mimicked the river's flow. The keepers, too, wound down, sharing stories around low fires where embers glowed like distant stars. In these tales, there was a quiet wit, as one might jest about an elephant's stubbornness, outsmarting the king's advisors. A light-hearted nod to the beast's intelligence that kept spirits high. Through it all, the mystery lingered like a shadow on the water, the uncharted schedules that defined these lives. Archaeological evidence, drawn from reports of Mauryan era sites, reveals tools and structures that suggest such routines. But the details slip away, much like the river's current. Why were these daily patterns never documented, left instead to the winds of memory? Perhaps in an age where survival depended on the unspoken bond between man and beast, words were unnecessary, and the rhythm of the day spoke for itself. As the night deepened, with the river's whispers growing faint and the elephants' breaths a steady lull, the keepers lay under the vast sky, their dhoties drawn close against the cooling air. The day's end brought a peaceful transition, a gentle fade into the unknown, where tomorrow's routines would unfold once more, carrying echoes of the past into the quiet expanse of history. And so, as this chapter closes, another waits on the horizon, as timeless in the hushed expanse of a Mauryan camp under the vast Indian sky, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in soft amber hues. The elephant keepers moved with a quiet rhythm that echoed the ancient pulse of the land. These handlers, clad in simple tunics of coarse linen, dyed in earthy tones, stepped lightly across the dusty trails that wound through the encampment. The air carried the warm scent of sun-baked earth and distant jasmine, mingling with the faint musk of the great beasts they tended. Here, in the 3rd century before the Common Era, amid the shadows of the Mauryan Empire's might, the art of elephant training unfolded like a gentle whisper, a secret dance between man and animal that had been passed down through generations. The keepers, their faces weathered by years under the open sky, approached their charges with an innate calm, their voices soft as the rustle of leaves in a monsoon breeze. One might imagine a handler named Arjuna, though no records name him so, standing before a massive elephant, its gray hide dusted with the fine particles of the trail, glistening faintly in the fading light. He wore a tunic that hung loosely, tied at the waist with a cord of woven fibers, allowing ease of movement as he extended a hand laden with fresh sugarcane, its sweet aroma cutting through the dry air. The elephant, a creature of immense power, yet delicate in its responses, swayed gently its trunk curling forward with a soft, inquisitive huff. This was the beginning of trust, the first thread in the tapestry of training techniques drawn from the Arthashastra, that venerable text attributed to the wise Kautilya, which spoke of taming wild forces for the empire's service. In those days, the techniques were as varied as the winding rivers of the subcontinent, each method honed through observation and repetition, whispered from master to apprentice under the stars. The handlers began with what they called the call of kinship, a series of soft commands uttered in a melodic cadence, like a lullaby meant to soothe a restless child. Words such as ah for halt or chal for forward were delivered not as sharp orders, but as gentle invitations, their tones infused with a subtle wit, as if the keeper were sharing a private joke with the elephant. One might hear the faint echo of these commands across the camp, blending with the distant calls of night birds, the air alive with the rhythmic crunch of leaves under massive feet. The dust rose in lazy swirls, settling on the handlers' tunics and the elephants' backs, a tactile reminder of the earth's enduring presence. To build obedience, the keepers employed the path of shadows, guiding the elephants along marked trails at dawn when the world was still cool and quiet. Here, sensory details abounded. The cool dew on the grass brushing against bare ankles, the earthy taste of the morning air on the tongue, and the subtle vibration of the ground as the beasts moved in unison. A handler would walk beside the elephant, his hand resting lightly on its flank, feeling the warmth of its skin and the steady beat of its heart through the dust-caked hide. This technique, as described in fragments of Mauryan inscriptions, involved rewarding small successes with treats like ripe bananas or handfuls of grain, their sweetness a counterpoint to the day's labors. The wit lay in the keeper's patient banter, murmured phrases like, "Oh, wise one, even kings bend to the wind," acknowledging the elephant's dignity while steering it toward compliance. Another method, known as the circle of harmony, took place in the open grounds of the camp, where elephants were led in slow, circling patterns to foster balance and control. The handlers, their tunics now speckled with the red dust of the earth, used long poles with padded ends, gently pressing against the elephant's side to guide its steps. The air filled with the soft thud of feet on packed soil, the occasional trumpet of an elephant testing its boundaries, and the keeper's hushed responses, like a stream flowing over stones. Sensory richness defined these moments. The warmth of the sun on one's back, the gritty texture of the dust between fingers, and the faint, comforting scent of camphor rubbed into the elephants' foreheads for good fortune. This practice, rooted in the Arthasastra's advice on animal husbandry, aimed not at domination, but at mutual understanding, a dance where both parties learned to anticipate the other's movements. Yet, amid these techniques, there lingered a mystery, a veil drawn over certain lost methods that time has not fully unveiled. Whispers in the ancient texts suggest that some keepers possessed knowledge of the hidden whispers. Rituals involving rhythmic chants and herbal infusions that calmed even the most unruly elephants. These were oral traditions, passed in the dim light of evening fires, never inscribed for fear of misuse or dilution. Imagine, if you will, a handler tracing symbols in the dust with a stick, murmuring incantations whose meanings have faded like footprints in the rain. The Arthashastra alludes to such practices, hinting at potions made from rare forest roots, their bitter aroma mingling with the camp's smoky fires to enhance an elephant's focus during training. But these methods vanished with the empire's decline, carried away by the winds of history, leaving modern scholars to ponder their efficacy. Was it the herbs, the chants, or merely the bond forged in those quiet hours that wrought such wonders? The mystery adds a layer of intrigue, a subtle wit in the universe's way of guarding its secrets, much like how a river reveals its depths only to the patient observer. As the day waned, the training sessions evolved into more intricate exercises, drawing from the Mauryan emphasis on elephants as instruments of war and labor. The test of resolve involved leading elephants through narrow paths lined with rustling bamboo, their trunks swaying to the scent of wildflowers blooming nearby. Handlers used soft ropes, looped gently around the elephant's tusks, to steer them, feeling the tension like a conversation through touch. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint saltiness of distant rivers, and the handlers' tunics fluttered in the breeze, a reminder of the elements' constant presence. In these moments, the keeper's wit shone through in their light-hearted asides, such as joking that an elephant's stubborn turn was a lesson for impatient kings, blending humor with the gravity of their work to refine coordination. There was the Shadow March, where elephants were trained to follow commands in formation, their steps synchronized to the beat of a distant drum. The sensory tapestry here was vivid. The warm press of the sun warmed ground underfoot, the earthy taste of dust on the lips, and the rhythmic sway that lulled both beast and handler into a trance-like state. Historical examples from Mauryan records, such as the accounts of Emperor Ashoka's processions, illustrate how these techniques ensured elephants moved as one, their power harnessed without force. Yet the lost methods resurface in the mind's eye, perhaps involving ancient mantras that aligned the elephant's energies with the cosmos, their vibrations felt in the air like a gentle hum. Throughout, the handlers maintained a detached poise, especially when addressing any mishaps, such as an elephant's momentary resistance that might lead to a shifted load or a delayed march. They focused not on the immediate chaos, but on the eventual harmony, viewing it as a natural consequence of the training process. The mystery of those unrecorded techniques added a dreamlike quality, as if the camp itself held echoes of forgotten wisdom, waiting for a curious soul to decipher. As the stars began to twinkle above the camp, the handlers concluded their sessions with the eve of rest, guiding elephants to shaded enclosures where the air grew thick with the scent of night blooming flowers. Here they offered final soft commands, their voices fading into the darkness like a lullaby, ensuring the beasts settled peacefully. This gentle close, drawn from the enduring legacy of Mauryan practices, left one pondering the artistry of it all, a testament to human ingenuity intertwined with nature's grandeur. And so, as the camp quiets under the moon's watchful gaze, we turn our thoughts to what lies beyond these ancient trails, where other stories of the empire await their telling. In the hushed dawn of the Mauryan Empire, where the ancient forests of 3rd century BCE India whispered secrets to the wind, a group of elephant keepers stirred from their modest thatched shelters, clad in simple dhotis of coarse cotton, dyed in earthy hues that blended with the foliage. These handlers moved with a quiet rhythm, their bare feet padding softly over dew-kissed grass. The air carried a faint, sweet tang of ripening fruits and the distant murmur of a river, as if the world itself were easing into wakefulness. These men, sturdy and weathered from years under the sun, embarked on their daily quest for sustenance, not for themselves, but for the colossal beasts that served as the empire's living fortresses. The forests around the Mauryan strongholds, vast expanses of sal trees and bamboo thickets near what is now known as the Gangetic Plain, provided a bounty that seemed almost endless. Archaeological digs at sites like Taxila and the remains of Ashoka's pillars have unearthed fragments of wooden tools and woven baskets, hinting at the meticulous ways these keepers harvested fodder. With woven sacks slung over their shoulders, the handlers ventured forth, their movements deliberate and unhurried, as if they were part of the landscape itself. The rustle of leaves underfoot created a gentle symphony, a soft crinkle that mimicked the sigh of a sleeping child, while the occasional call of a peacock echoed like a distant lullaby through the canopy. One might imagine Rajan, a handler with a calm demeanor and a subtle wit that surfaced in his soft-spoken jests, leading the group. He would pause by a cluster of tall grasses, their blades swaying in the breeze like green ribbons, and run his calloused hands along the stems. "Ah, these will do nicely," he might murmur with a faint smile, his words carrying a hint of amusement at the elephants' voracious appetites. The fodder they sought was diverse, drawn from the wild abundance. Fresh bamboo shoots, crisp and tender, their fibrous texture promising a satisfying crunch. Broad leaves from the fig trees, veined and velvety, exuding a mild, earthy aroma that lingered in the air, and clusters of wild berries, plump and juicy, adding a touch of sweetness to the mix. As they gathered, the handlers moved with a reverence born of necessity and tradition. Excavations at ancient Mauryan sites have revealed stone grinding tools and storage pits, suggesting that not all fodder came straight from the forest. Grains like barley, and millet, inferred from charred remains found in pottery shards, were sometimes mixed in, ground into a coarse mash to supplement the greens. The keepers would kneel by the forest edge, their dhoties brushing against the cool soil, selecting only the healthiest plants. A gentle breeze might carry the scent of crushed herbs, a herbal whisper that spoke of the land's generosity, while the sun's first rays painted the scene in warm gold, casting long shadows that danced like playful spirits. Back at the elephant enclosures, simple affairs of wooden posts and earthen barriers near the riverbanks. The handlers prepared the feast. The elephants, majestic creatures with hides like ancient bark, waited with a patience that seemed almost wise. One could hear the soft thud of fodder bundles being set down, followed by the elephants' trunks extending like curious serpents, probing the air with delicate sniffs. The munching that ensued was a symphony of its own. The rhythmic grind of molars on leaves, a sound like distant waves lapping at the shore, accompanied by the occasional contented rumble, deep and resonant, vibrating through the ground. In these moments, the keeper's gentle touch was key. They would guide the elephants' trunks to the piles, their voices low and soothing, a murmur that blended with the rustling of the fodder. "There now, gentle one," a handler might say, his tone laced with that subtle wit, as if sharing a private joke with the beast. "This bamboo is fresher than the king's own gardens." Sensory details abounded, the sticky residue of sap on fingers, carrying a resinous scent that evoked the forest's depths, the cool, damp feel of riverbank grass, still wet from the morning mist, and the faint, nutty aroma of ground grains being sprinkled over the greens for added nourishment. Historical records, pieced together from inscriptions and artifacts, paint a picture of these practices as both practical and profound. Ashoka's edicts, carved into rock pillars and discovered in places like Sarnath, emphasize the welfare of animals, including elephants, in the empire's vast domains. While the edicts don't detail feeding specifics, archaeological evidence from sites like Bida and Mauryan suggests a sophisticated understanding of nutrition. Fragments of animal bones and plant residues indicate that keepers selected fodder not just for quantity, but for quality, perhaps intuiting the elephant's needs through generations of observation. Yet, amidst this careful routine, a quiet mystery lingers, like a shadow in the undergrowth. The sources of certain fodders remain unrecorded, lost to the mists of time. Excavations have turned up enigmatic clues, oddly shaped seeds in ancient storage jars, or pollen traces in soil samples that don't match known local plants, hinting at trade networks or secret groves tended by the keepers themselves. One wonders, in a tone as detached as the wind through the trees, if these handlers ventured to hidden valleys where rare vines and herbs grew in abundance, their locations guarded like family heirlooms. Perhaps they bartered with distant tribes for exotic grasses, their dhoti-clad figures traversing dusty paths under the stars, carrying bundles that carried whispers of far-off lands. This enigma adds a layer of intrigue, a subtle puzzle that invites reflection without disrupting the calm. As the day progressed, the handlers would ensure each elephant received its share, their movements fluid and unassuming. The sensory tapestry continued. The warm breath of an elephant nuzzling a handler's hand, carrying the faint sweetness of digested berries, the soft squelch of mud underfoot as they adjusted the piles, and the distant chirp of birds weaving through the air like threads in a loom. In one historical example, artifacts from Mauryan-era settlements show carved ivory seals depicting elephants amid foliage, suggesting that these feeding practices were not only routine, but culturally significant, a bond between man and beast that sustained the empire's might. Through it all, the tone remained one of gentle harmony, a lullaby sung to the rhythm of nature. The keepers, with their subtle wit, might chuckle softly at an elephant's playful trunk swipe, turning even the simplest act into a moment of shared levity. You eat like you've never seen a leaf before, one might tease, his voice a soothing balm against the day's warmth. Archaeological insights, such as the discovery of feeding troughs shaped from stone at sites near Putna, reinforce this picture, showing how these practices evolved with careful adaptation. As the sun arced toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the enclosures, the handlers stepped back, their tasks complete. The elephants, now sated, swayed gently, their massive forms a testament to the care bestowed upon them. In this serene close, one feels the weight of history, the unrecorded mysteries lingering like a faint echo, inviting curiosity without urgency. And so, as the shadows lengthen and the forest breathes its evening sigh, we turn our gaze to what lies beyond these nurturing rituals, to the threads that weave the larger tapestry of the Mauryan world. Word count 1,500 in the gentle hush of a riverbank along the Yamuna, where the waters murmured secrets to the ancient stones. A group of elephant keepers gathered as the sun dipped low. These men, clad in simple dhotis of coarse cotton that whispered against their skin with each movement, formed a circle under the shade of banyan trees. It was the 3rd century BCE, in the vast expanse of the Mauryan Empire, where the rhythms of life flowed like the river itself, steady, unassuming, and deeply intertwined. Among them, bonds wove silently, not etched in scrolls or proclaimed in courts, but felt in the shared warmth of a meal and the quiet exchange of glances. The air carried the earthy scent of damp soil and foliage, mingled with the aromatic smoke from a fire where flatbreads sizzled on hot stones. The keepers, their hands calloused from years of guiding massive beasts through forests and battles, moved with a deliberate grace, as if every action was a ritual, honoring their unspoken fellowship. One man, his dhoti hitched up to reveal weathered ankles, flipped a piece of roti with a wooden spatula, the dough bubbling and releasing a savory fragrance that danced on the breeze. Nearby, another stirred a pot of lentil stew, the soft hiss of boiling water blending with the distant trumpeting of elephants resting in the shallows. Their laughter came in low, melodic waves, like the river's current, tinged with a subtle wit that poked fun at the day's minor mishaps, a stubborn elephant's detour, or a misplaced harness without malice. Only fondness. These keepers, drawn from diverse corners of the empire, found unity in their shared purpose. Archaeological remnants from sites like Taxila and the Mauryan capitals speak of such communities, where terracotta figurines and seal impressions depict men in similar attire tending to elephants, suggesting networks of trust that sustained the empire's might. Yet it was not the grand strategies of kings that bound them, but the daily tapestry of small, sensory moments. As they sat cross-legged on woven mats, the warmth of the fire kissed their faces, and the taste of spiced chickpeas, earthy and comforting, lingered on their tongues. One keeper, his voice a soothing baritone, recounted tales of a legendary herd migration, his words painting vivid images of towering beasts crossing rivers, while his companions nodded, their eyes reflecting the fire's glow. The meal unfolded slowly, each bite savored, each story a thread in the fabric of their camaraderie. In this setting, friendships blossomed like the lotus flowers along the river's edge, their petals unfurling under the softening light. The mystery of these unwritten bonds intrigued even the scholars who later pieced together fragments from excavation. Reports how men who lived on the fringes of recorded history forged alliances that echoed through generations. Perhaps it was in the way they leaned into one another during a shared jest, their shoulders brushing in silent affirmation, or the gentle clink of clay cups as they passed around fermented rice water, its tangy sweetness cutting through the evening air. No edicts or inscriptions captured these ties. Instead, they lived in the artifacts, like the simple beads and amulets found in keeper settlements, hinting at exchanges of gifts that symbolized enduring loyalty. One might imagine a keeper slipping a carved ivory trinket into a friend's hand, a token from an elephant's tusk, its smooth surface cool against the palm, a gesture as fleeting as the river's ripples, yet as profound as the stars above. As twilight deepened, the scene grew more intimate, the fire's embers casting a golden haze that softened the lines of fatigue on their faces. The sound of the river provided a lullaby, its gentle lapping against the banks drowning out the empire's distant clamor. Here, away from the dust of royal processions or the clamor of markets, these men created their own world, one where the scent of jasmine from nearby blooms mingled with the musky odor of elephants, grounding them in the present. A keeper with a scar across his forearm, earned from a wayward trunk years ago, shared a wry smile as he described the beast's antics, his words laced with that subtle wit. Ah, he thought my doti was a plaything, tugging it like a child toy kite. The others chuckled softly, the laughter like a warm blanket settling over them, easing the weight of their labors. Historical accounts from archaeological surveys, such as those conducted at sites like Beta and Lauria, reveal that elephant keepers were more than mere laborers. They were custodians of a living heritage. The empire relied on these animals for warfare and trade, and the keepers' expertise was passed down through oral traditions, much like the recipes for their riverside feasts. Yet the true essence of their community lay in the intangible, the way they supported one another through hardships. Their bonds forged in the quiet moments between duties. One evening, as the flatbreads cooled on leaves, a keeper might recall a time when floods had swept through their camp, and how his fellows had rallied without a word, their hands working in unison to salvage tools and tend to the elephants. The memory evoked the taste of shared relief, a simple meal eaten under the stars, where the crunch of fresh greens and the saltiness of preserved fruits offered solace. In these gatherings, the mystery deepened. How could such profound connections remain unwritten, preserved only in the echoes of pottery shards and the patterns of ancient campsites? Perhaps it was deliberate, a choice to keep their world sacred, away from the prying eyes of historians who favored kings and conquests. The keepers' friendships were like the river itself, fluid, resilient, and ever-present, flowing beneath the surface of documented events. As the night air grew cooler, carrying the faint, sweet aroma of night-blooming flowers, one man hummed an old melody, its notes weaving through the darkness, a lullaby that spoke of journeys shared and paths yet to come. His companions listened, their eyes half closed, the fire's warmth seeping into their bones, creating a sense of peace that transcended words. This community, as revealed through the careful analysis of Mauryan-era artifacts, exemplified a quiet strength. Seals from the period, unearthed at places like Sanshai, depict elephants in procession, with human figures nearby, suggesting the keeper's integral role. Yet it is the sensory details that bring their bonds to life. The feel of cool river water on bare feet as they washed after a meal, the soft rustle of doties in the wind, or the satisfying crackle of a fire being stoked. One keeper might offer a piece of fruit, its juicy pulp bursting with flavor, a small act that sealed a pact of mutual care. In these exchanges, wit surfaced gently, as when one teased another about his elephant's preference for certain leaves, comparing it to a picky child, drawing smiles that lingered like the last light of day. As the stars multiplied overhead, the keepers reclined on their mats, the river's song a constant companion. Their conversations meandered like the water's path, touching on dreams and distant lands, always returning to the present. The mystery of their unwritten friendships invited reflection, how these ties, inferred from the absence in texts and the presence in relics, formed the unseen backbone of the empire. Archaeological evidence, from the layout of keeper quarters to the tools they used, paints a picture of a network built on trust, where each man was a guardian not just of elephants, but of one another. In the fading glow, as the fire dimmed to embers, a sense of contentment settled over the group. They knew that tomorrow would bring new tasks, but for now, the bonds held firm, a calming force amid the vastness of history. And as the night deepened, one might glance toward the river, whispering a quiet transition to whatever lay ahead, where other stories waited to unfold. In the fading light of a warm afternoon in 3rd century BCE India, under the vast skies of the Mauryan Empire, a group of elephant keepers gathered at the base of a modest Buddhist stupa. These men, clad in simple tunics of rough cotton dyed in earthy hues, moved with the quiet grace of those who lived in rhythm with the natural world. Their days were spent tending to the great beasts that roamed the forests and plains. But here, amidst the ancient stones, they turned their attentions to rituals that echoed the emperor's calls for compassion and harmony. Emperor Ashoka, in his edicts carved upon pillars and rocks across the land, had urged all subjects to embrace the path of Dharma, a way of life that valued kindness to animals and reverence for the spiritual. For these keepers, such edicts were not mere words, but guides for their offerings, blending daily duties with acts of devotion that softened the edges of their laborious existence. The air around the stupa carried a gentle fragrance, wisps of sandalwood incense curling upward like faint whispers from the earth. Each keeper held a small clay bowl filled with grains or fresh flowers gathered from the nearby fields, their hands steady as they approached the dome-shaped structure. The stupa itself rose humbly from the ground, its surface smoothed by time and the touch of many pilgrims, a silent monument to the Buddha's teachings that Ashoka had so fervently promoted. In his 13th rock edict, the emperor spoke of respect for all living beings, a principle these men embodied as they cared for their elephants with the same tenderness they now offered to the sacred site. One keeper, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of service, knelt slowly, placing his bowl at the stupa's foot. The soft rustle of fabric against stone was almost lost in the breeze, but it carried a subtle rhythm, like a heartbeat syncing with the world around. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the scene, the keepers began their chants, voices low and melodic, weaving through the air like threads of silk. May the great ones find peace, they murmured, drawing from the dharmic ideals inscribed in Ashoka's pillars, where he declared the importance of moral conduct and non-violence. The words flowed gently, not as commands, but as invitations, their tones lullaby-like in their cadence. One could almost feel the warmth of the stones beneath their feet, warmed by the day's sun, while the distant trumpeting of an elephant in the nearby grove added a faint, resonant undertone. Incense smoke drifted lazily, teasing the nostrils with its sweet, woody scent, and the keepers' faces reflected a serene focus, their eyes half closed in quiet contemplation. These rituals were more than routine. They were a bridge between the mundane and the divine, a way to honor the beasts they guarded, and the emperor's vision of a harmonious realm. Yet, amidst this peaceful observance, there lingered an unspoken mystery, the shadow of unwritten rituals that had been passed down through generations, like secrets carried on the wind. For while Ashoka's edicts provided a framework of ethical guidance, they did not detail every custom of these humble devotees. The keepers knew rites that were never etched into stone or bark, practices whispered in the dim light of campfires, or shared in the hush of dawn. Perhaps it was a gesture, a particular way of tilting the bowl to catch the light of the setting sun, symbolizing the elephant's trunk reaching for the heavens, or a silent prayer invoking the spirits of ancient forests. These elements remained elusive, known only to those who lived the life, a subtle enigma that added depth to their devotions. In a world where much was recorded for posterity, these unwritten traditions hinted at a deeper, more personal faith, one that Ashoka himself might have encouraged through his emphasis on individual moral reflection. As seen in his edicts promoting self-control and piety, the keepers moved in unison, their tunics swaying gently as they circled the stupa, each step measured and deliberate. The ground beneath them was soft with trodden earth, dotted with wildflowers that released a faint, herbal aroma when brushed by passing feet. One man paused to light another stick of incense, its flame flickering briefly before settling into a steady glow, the smoke rising in delicate spirals that danced in the air. The chants grew softer, blending with the rustling leaves overhead, creating a symphony of subtle sounds that enveloped the scene like a warm embrace. In Ashoka's words, carved into the rocks of the empire, he spoke of the welfare of animals as integral to human prosperity. And here, the keepers embodied that ideal. They offered not out of obligation, but from a place of genuine reverence, their actions a testament to the bond forged through daily care. Though they spoke not of community ties, focusing instead on their solitary communion with the sacred. As twilight deepened, the sky turned to a canvas of soft purples and oranges, and the air cooled with a gentle breeze that carried the distant scent of blooming jasmine. The keepers' rituals unfolded with a wit as subtle as the smile in a Buddha statue. For in their practiced movements, one might glimpse a quiet humor the way a keeper might adjust his tunic with a barely perceptible nod, as if sharing a jest with the stupa itself about the follies of human endeavor. Ashoka's edicts, in their wisdom, reminded all of the impermanence of life, and these men, with their elephants waiting in the shadows, seemed to embody that transient beauty. They poured water from simple earthen pots, the liquid trickling over the stones with a soothing murmur, evoking the rivers that nourished the land and the empire's prosperity under Ashoka's rule. Each drop symbolized renewal, a nod to the cycles of nature that the edicts celebrated. encouraging harmony between man and beast. In the quiet interludes, the mystery of those unwritten rituals surfaced again, like a faint echo in the chants. What precise words were uttered in the dead of night, when the keepers gathered away from prying eyes, perhaps invocations drawn from oral traditions predating even Ashoka's time, murmured in dialects long faded from written records. These enigmas lent an air of intrigue to their practices, a gentle puzzle that invited reflection rather than resolution. The sensory world around them amplified this sense, the cool touch of stone against fingertips, the warm glow of oil lamps flickering in the dusk, the earthy taste of the air as it mingled with incense. One keeper, his face lined with the wisdom of years, might have paused to trace a pattern in the dust, a gesture whose meaning was known only to him, hinting at rituals that evolved with each generation, untouched by the emperor's inscriptions. As the stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant fireflies, the keepers concluded their offerings, their voices fading into the night. The stupa stood as a silent witness, its presence a reminder of Ashoka's enduring legacy of peace. Yet in the hearts of these men, the rituals continued, woven into the fabric of their lives, like the threads of their tunics. The gentle rustle of leaves and the lingering scent of incense marked the end of their devotion, leaving a calm that settled over the landscape like a soft blanket. And as the night deepened, one might wonder what other mysteries these keepers held, waiting to be explored in the stories yet to unfold. In the quiet aftermath, as the keepers retreated to their camps, with the soft padding of feet on earth, the scene transitioned seamlessly into the broader tapestry of the Empire's history, where each ritual and mystery paved the way for new revelations. In the hushed twilight of a Mauryan camp, nestled amid the ancient forests of 3rd century BCE India, elephant keepers moved with the quiet grace of shadows lengthening across the earth, dressed in simple dhotis, their cotton folds swaying gently in the warm breeze. These handlers tended to their charges under a canopy of stars and whispering leaves. The air carried a faint, earthy mist, heavy with the scent of crushed herbs and damp soil, a soothing balm that wrapped around the senses like a mother's embrace. Here, far from the clamor of empires and wars, the keepers practiced the ancient arts of healing, drawing from scrolls and oral traditions rooted in texts like the Charaka Samhita, where wisdom flowed like a tranquil river through the ages. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the keepers gathered in their modest shelters, their hands stained with the green hues of freshly picked leaves. They prepared infusions and poultices with a reverence born of generations, their movements deliberate and rhythmic, like the steady beat of a distant drum. One might crush neem leaves between calloused fingers, releasing a bitter yet cleansing aroma that mingled with the night's cooling air, while another steeped turmeric roots in warm water, the golden liquid glowing faintly in clay pots. The steam rose in gentle curls, carrying whispers of eucalyptus and sandalwood, enveloping the camp in a veil that eased the sting of old wounds and soothed weary muscles. In these moments, the handlers spoke little, their voices a soft murmur against the symphony of crickets and rustling foliage, for they believed that true healing began in silence, where the body could attune to nature's subtle rhythms. The keepers themselves were as much in need of care as the majestic elephants they tended, for the demands of their work often left them exposed to the elements and the perils of the wild. Drawing from the Sushruta Samhita's teachings on balance and vitality, they applied herbal pastes to their skin, mixtures of aloe vera and holy basil that cooled the heat of the day and fortified against unseen ailments. A handler might sit cross-legged on a mat of woven grass, the ground beneath him soft and yielding, as he rubbed a balm of sesame oil infused with ginger into his joints, the warming sensation spreading like a gentle tide. The air around him thickened with the spicy fragrance, cutting through the muddy dampness that clung to the camp after rains, a reminder of the earth's enduring cycle. These practices were not mere routines, but rituals passed down through whispered lineages, each application a thread in the tapestry of well-being. In the dim light of oil lamps, the keepers shared knowledge of remedies that had sustained their forebears through epochs of uncertainty. They spoke of oils extracted from the bark of the Ashoka tree, applied to ease the ache of overworked limbs, its woody scent evoking the strength of ancient forests, or the use of tulsi leaves, crushed and mixed with honey, to clear the mind and ward off the fog of fatigue. The sweet and peppery notes dancing on the tongue like a fleeting dream. Sensory memories wove through their exchanges, the cool touch of a compress on a fevered brow, the faint hiss of boiling water as herbs steeped, the earthy taste of a decoction that lingered long after it was consumed. These methods, rooted in the equilibrium of body and spirit, as described in Ayurvedic lore, ensured that even in the face of hardship, harmony prevailed. Yet, amid this serene tapestry, a quiet mystery lingered, like a half-forgotten melody carried on the wind. The keepers guarded secrets of remedies long lost to the sands of time, formulas once inscribed on fragile palm leaves that had crumbled under the weight of wars and monsoons. Whispers told of a potent elixir, perhaps a blend of rare Himalayan herbs and monsoon-gathered resins that could mend the deepest of internal afflictions. But its precise recipe had vanished, carried away by the river of history. In the Charaka Samhita, hints remained vague references to the essence of the mountains, mixed with the tears of the earth. Yet no one alive could recreate it fully. The handlers pondered this enigma in the quiet hours, their eyes reflecting the flicker of flames, wondering if the knowledge had been deliberately obscured to protect its power, or if it had simply faded like the stars at dawn. This lost art added a layer of gentle intrigue to their practices, a subtle reminder that not all wisdom could be grasped, only felt in the soul's quiet depths. As the night deepened, the keepers turned to preventive measures, drawing from the holistic wisdom of ancient texts to maintain their vigor. They practiced daily ablutions with infusions of vetiver and rose, the floral notes cutting through the camp's persistent, muddy aroma, leaving their skin refreshed and their spirits lifted. One might inhale the steam from a basin of boiled amla berries, the tart scent invigorating the lungs and clearing the mind, while another massaged frankincense resin into pulse points, its resinous warmth spreading a calming haze. These rituals were performed with a wit as light as a feather, the keepers exchanging soft jests about how even the mightiest elephant bowed to a simple herb, their laughter a hushed ripple that echoed the wind's playful sigh. In this way, health became not a battle but a dance, a harmonious flow that sustained both man and beast. The air in the camp was alive with these sensory tapestries, each practice a brushstroke on the canvas of the night. The cool, damp earth underfoot grounded the handlers, while the aromatic steam from their brews wrapped around them like an invisible cloak, shielding against the unseen threats of the wild. They recalled tales from the texts, like the use of harataki for digestive harmony, its astringent flavor a stark contrast to the sweetness of the surrounding air, yet essential for inner balance. Through it all, a subtle detachment colored their approach, for even in moments of pain, they focused on the path to restoration, viewing ailments as transient guests rather than foes. In the soft glow of pre-dawn, the keepers prepared for the day's demands with renewed strength, their bodies attuned to the rhythms of nature. They applied liniments of mustard seeds and cinnamon, the spicy warmth seeping into tired muscles, evoking the sun's first rays on dew-kissed leaves. The mystery of the lost recipes lingered in their thoughts, a gentle puzzle that added depth to their craft, as if the ancients had intended it as a legacy for the curious heart. Drawing from the Sushruta Samhita's emphasis on observation and intuition, they adapted their methods, blending herbs with an artistry that felt almost instinctive, the scents and textures guiding their hands. As the camp stirred with the first light, the handlers paused to reflect on the enduring wisdom of their traditions, a calming rhythm that flowed like a lullaby through the ages. The air, still laced with herbal echoes, whispered of resilience and renewal, reminding all who listened that health was a sacred thread in the fabric of life. And so, with the mystery of forgotten remedies tucked away like a secret star, the keepers readied themselves for what lay ahead, their story a seamless continuation in the grand tapestry of time. In the hushed dawn of 3rd century BCE India, under the vast skies of the Mauryan Empire, young voices mingled with the gentle rustle of leaves in the elephant stables. These were the children of families who tended the great beasts, their lives woven into the rhythm of ancient duties that echoed through the forests and riverbanks, dressed in simple small dhotis, soft as worn linen against their skin. The boys and girls moved with quiet purpose, their small hands reaching for bundles of fodder under the watchful eyes of towering elephants. The air carried the earthy scent of damp soil and fresh grass, while distant trumpets from the herd softened into a lullaby, reminding all of the bond between human and animal in this forgotten corner of history. These children, often no more than 7 or 8 summers old, played their part in the care of the empire's mighty elephants, creatures revered for their strength in battles and processions under Emperor Ashoka's rule. Archaeological fragments from sites like Taxila and the ancient stupas near Putna whisper of such lives, with terracotta figurines depicting youthful figures alongside pachyderms, their forms etched in clay to capture a moment frozen in time. The youngsters would gather armfuls of fodder tall grasses and leaves plucked from the riverine forests, carrying them with careful steps that left faint impressions in the dew-kissed earth. One could almost hear the soft patter of their bare feet, like whispers on the morning mist, as they approached the elephants' enclosures, their dhotis swaying gently in the breeze that carried hints of wild jasmine. In those early hours, the children's roles were as essential as they were understated, drawn from generations of tradition, preserved in the oral tales and faint inscriptions on stone relics. A boy might balance a woven basket of fodder on his hip, its weight pressing warmly against his side, while his sister trailed behind, her fingers brushing the rough bark of nearby trees for stability. They learned early to select the tenderest shoots, knowing from the elders' murmurs that an elephant's trunk could discern the sweetest blades with a sensitivity that rivaled their own growing awareness. The trumpets of the beasts, low and resonant like distant thunder rolling over the plains, would signal approval or impatience, guiding the children without a word. One might imagine the warm breath of an elephant enveloping a child as he offered a handful of greens, the air thick with the musky scent of the animal's hide, a subtle reminder of the wild world just beyond the stable walls. Yet even in this gentle routine, there lingered a mystery to the unrecorded tasks these children undertook, tasks that archaeology has only hinted at through the absence of detail. In the fragments of Mauryan pottery and the faded seals from the era, we see outlines of daily life, but the specifics of what the youngest did in the shadows of the stables remain elusive, like echoes fading into the wind. Perhaps they whispered secrets to the elephants during the quiet afternoons, tasks not etched into stone pillars or chronicled in the edicts of Ashoka, but passed in fleeting gestures. One could picture a child slipping away to mend a strap on a harness, their small fingers working with a wit that belied their years, or perhaps inventing games to test the elephant's responses. A playful nudge that archaeology might overlook. These unrecorded moments add a layer of intrigue, a soft puzzle wrapped in the sensory tapestry of the time, the cool touch of river water as they washed the beast's feet, or the faint crunch of leaves underfoot as they scouted for the perfect fodder. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the landscape, the children adapted to their roles with a natural grace, their doties fluttering like whispers of cloth in the warm air. Historical evidence from excavation sites, such as the animal motifs on Ashoka's pillars, suggests that elephant keeping was a familial craft, with children absorbing skills through observation and imitation. A girl might kneel beside a young calf, her hands gentle on its leathery skin, feeling the vibrations of its contented rumble as she offered a cluster of bamboo shoots. The sensory world around them was alive, the sticky sap from broken branches clinging to their palms, the rhythmic sway of the elephant's ears like silent fans against the heat, and the distant calls of birds weaving through the trees. In this way, they contributed to the empire's might, ensuring the animals were fit for the processions that carried Ashoka's messages of Dharma across the land. Subtle wit emerged in their interactions, a lightness that softened the weight of their responsibilities. One might chuckle inwardly at an elephant's trunk playfully curling around a child's doti, tugging it just enough to elicit a quiet giggle, a moment of levity amid the seriousness of their tasks. Archaeological finds, like the ivory carvings from Beta, depict similar scenes, though they leave room for imagination in the details. The children, with their innate curiosity, might have experimented with new ways to prepare fodder, blending herbs that archaeological analysis later confirmed were used for soothing the elephant's ailments. Their actions, a blend of instinct and inherited knowledge, but the mystery deepened in the unspoken duties, those facets of their lives that slipped through the cracks of history, while edicts and artifacts reveal the grander roles of elephant keepers. The children's contributions often went unnoted, perhaps because they were seen as extensions of the family's collective effort. One envisions a boy venturing into the forest at dusk, his footsteps muffled by the soft undergrowth, to gather rare vines for the elephant's evening feed, a task that left no trace in the records, yet shaped the rhythm of their days. The air at that hour would carry the cooling breeze, laced with the scent of blooming night flowers, and the elephant's soft trumpets would fade into a harmonious backdrop, inviting speculation on what else these young ones managed in the fading light. Through it all, the children's roles were a delicate balance of care and learning. Their small doties, a symbol of their place in this ancient world. Sensory details abound in the historical narrative, from the warm press of sunlight on their shoulders as they worked, to the earthy taste of dust on their lips from the elephant's playful sprays. Archaeological discoveries, such as the terracotta plaques from Chandraketugarh, offer glimpses of children in similar attire, their figures forever captured in the act of tending to beasts. Yet they tantalize with what remains hidden. Perhaps the unrecorded tasks included subtle acts of companionship, like singing lullabies to calm a restless calf, their voices blending with the natural symphony around them. A wit-infused melody that history has not preserved. As the day waned, the children would retreat to the edges of the stables, their duties complete for the moment, leaving one to ponder the enigma of their unseen contributions. The mystery of these unrecorded tasks, hinted at in the gaps of archaeological evidence, adds a poetic layer to their story, inviting a gentle curiosity that lingers like the last notes of an elephant's call. In the quiet that followed, one might sense the empire's heartbeat through their small actions, a reminder of how the young shaped the shadows of history. And as the stars began to twinkle above the ancient forests, we turn our thoughts to the next whisper of the past, where other tales await in the folds of time. In the fading glow of a 3rd century BCE evening, under the vast Indian sky where stars began to stitch their patterns, the Mauryan elephant keeper camps nestled like forgotten cradles amid the whispering grasslands. Here, in these transient outposts of the empire, handlers clad in simple dhotis, soft, sun-bleached cotton draping their limbs, settled into the rhythm of repose. Woven tents of bamboo and palm fronds fluttered gently, their edges catching the last breezes of the day, as if breathing in harmony with the world around them. The air carried the earthy scent of damp soil and smoldering wood, a soothing lull that invited the mind to wander through the quiet mysteries of ancient life, far from the clamor of courts or the grind of routine tasks. These camps were sanctuaries of sorts, hidden pockets in the empire's vast network, where men who tended the great beasts, those colossal symbols of Mauryan, might found moments of peace after the sun's descent. Picture them now, reclining on mats of woven rushes, their dhotis gathered loosely around their waists, the fabric's subtle weave brushing against skin warmed by the day's labors. The tents, simple yet ingenious, rose like gentle hills against the horizon, their thatched roofs rustling with the occasional sigh of wind, as if sharing secrets with the night. Fire pits at the camp's heart crackled softly, flames dancing in hypnotic patterns, casting a warm amber light that painted shadows on the handlers' faces. The scent of roasting barley and wild herbs wafted through the air, mingling with the faint, musky aroma of elephants resting nearby, their massive forms looming as silent guardians in the dimness. Life in these camps unfolded with a serene cadence, a tapestry woven from the threads of daily survival and imperial duty, yet always tinged with an undercurrent of enigma. The handlers, drawn from the empire's fringes, perhaps villagers skilled in the ways of the wild, spoke in hushed tones, their voices a soft murmur like the rustle of leaves in a monsoon breeze. One might lean against a tent pole, its smooth bamboo cool under his palm, and recount tales of the beasts they cared for, stories laced with subtle wit, as when a handler might jest that an elephant's trunk was a river that drinks the wind, a clever nod to its endless curiosity. The ground beneath them, packed earth softened by years of footsteps, held the memory of countless evenings, its surface etched with faint impressions from the stakes that anchored the tents, reminders of a design both practical and profound, archaeological whispers from sites like those at Taxila and the Deccan plateaus suggest that these camps were more than mere shelters. They were microcosms of Mauryan ingenuity, drawing from the empire's vast resources under Emperor Ashoka's rule. Reports from excavations, such as those by the Archaeological Survey of India, reveal fragments of pottery and tools that hint at a structured layout, circular enclosures for the elephants, perhaps with radial paths leading to the handlers' quarters. Yet, amid this clarity, there lies a mystery that lingers like mist over a dawn river. The lost designs of these camps, blueprints vanished into the sands of time. Scholars pore over inscribed stones and ancient edicts, but the precise arrangements, how the tents were oriented to catch the monsoon winds, or aligned with celestial bodies for navigation, remain elusive. A puzzle that teases the imagination. One can almost feel the weight of this enigma in the cool night air, as a handler traces idle patterns in the dirt with a stick, his fingers brushing against grains that might once have been part of a forgotten map. The sensory world of the camp enveloped everything in a blanket of calm. The fire's gentle crackle provided a steady heartbeat, its warmth seeping into bones weary from tending to the elephant's needs, while the faint chirp of crickets wove through the darkness like a lullaby. Fabrics flapped lazily against the tent frames, their threads whispering tales of distant looms, where skilled artisans had crafted them from the empire's finest cotton, dyed in earthy tones that blended with the landscape. A handler might reach for a clay vessel, its smooth surface cool and reassuring, filled with cool well water that carried the faint taste of minerals from the surrounding hills. A simple pleasure that grounded him in the present. The elephants themselves, though at rest, added their own symphony, the soft rumble of breath, like distant thunder rolling over the plains, and the occasional shuffle of a massive foot against the grass, a reminder of their gentle power. In these moments, the handlers' lives intertwined with the natural world in ways that archaeological findings only begin to illuminate. Reports from sites near the ancient city of Pataliputra speak of similar camps, where tools like iron hooks and ropes suggest a deep knowledge of animal behavior, passed down through generations. Yet it is the mystery of the designs that adds a layer of intrigue, a subtle wit in the universe's design, as if the camps themselves were meant to fade like dreams at dawn. Perhaps the layouts were intentionally obscured, protected secrets of the Mauryan military, or maybe time's erosion simply claimed them, leaving behind only echoes in the soil. A handler gazing into the flames, might ponder this with a wry smile, murmuring that the earth guards its stories as jealously as an elephant its herd. A clever turn of phrase that lightens the weight of the unknown. As the night deepened, the camp transformed into a haven of repose, where the handlers' doties, now loosened and relaxed, rustled against the mats like waves lapping at a shore. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of dew settling on the grass, a fresh contrast to the day's heat. One could hear the distant call of a night bird, its melody weaving through the fire's soft pops, creating a symphony that soothed the soul. In this space, free from the Empire's grand machinations, the men found solace in small rituals, sharing a simple meal of lentils and flatbreads, their flavors earthy and comforting, or passing around a gourd of fermented palm sap, its sweet tang a gentle indulgence. The tents, with their intricate weaves, offered not just shelter, but a sense of enclosure, their flaps swaying like eyelids in slumber, blocking out the vastness of the world beyond. Yet even in this tranquility, the mystery persisted, a thread pulling at the fabric of their existence. Archaeological digs have uncovered remnants, charred wood from fire pits, fragments of beads that might have adorned a handler's neck. But the full picture eludes us. Why were certain camps built on elevated ground, as evidenced by terrace, like structures in the Vindir regions? Was it to ward off floods, or perhaps to align with the stars? A lost astronomical knowledge that guided the Mauryan's campaigns. The handlers, in their quiet hours, might have speculated on such things, their conversations laced with the subtle humor of men who lived among giants, joking that the elephants knew more secrets than they did. This enigma, drawn from historical reports, like those of Sir Alexander Cunningham's surveys, adds a poetic depth, reminding us that some knowledge slips away like smoke from a dying fire. Through it all, the camp's life hummed with a lullaby like rhythm, each element a note in a larger melody. The feel of the doty's fabric against skin, the taste of smoke on the tongue, the sound of breath synchronizing with the wind, all wove together into a tapestry of calm. As the stars wheeled overhead, the handlers drifted toward sleep, their forms silhouetted against the fading glow, the mystery of their world lingering like a half-remembered dream. And so, as the night wanes and the first hints of dawn stir the horizon, we leave this serene enclave where the echoes of ancient designs whisper through the ages, drawing us toward the next thread in the Empire's story. Along the banks of the Ganges, where the river's gentle current whispered secrets through the reeds, the Mauryan elephant keepers gathered at dawn, clad in simple doties of coarse cotton, their bare feet sinking into the cool, damp earth. They moved with the quiet rhythm of ritual. The air carried the earthy scent of wet soil and distant monsoon rains, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of tools awaiting care. In this serene expanse, under a sky streaked with soft pastels, they tended to the goads and implements that sustained their bond with the great beasts, those colossal guardians of the empire, the keepers, their faces weathered by sun and wind, selected their grinding stones from a pile smoothed by years of use. Each stone, heavy and cool in the hand, bore faint etchings from ancient quarries, remnants of a craftsmanship long revered. They sat cross-legged on flat rocks by the water's edge, the river's soft lapping providing a soothing backdrop to their work. One keeper, his dhoti hitched up to reveal sun-brown knees, lifted a goad, a slender staff tipped with a curved metal point, its design echoing the precision of forgotten forges. He placed it against the stone and with deliberate strokes began to sharpen it. The grinding produced a low, rhythmic scrape, like the distant call of a nightingale at dusk, a sound that blended seamlessly with the rustle of leaves overhead. The air grew thick with the scent of stone dust and river mud, a earthy perfume that settled over the scene like a veil. Particles danced in the morning light, catching the eye with their subtle glitter, while the keeper's hands moved in steady arcs. Each motion was infused with a quiet wisdom passed down through generations, though the origins of these tools remained shrouded in mystery. Archaeological digs at sites like Taxila and Pataliputra had unearthed fragments, rusted goad tips, and worn handles that hinted at designs more intricate than what survived. Scholars whispered of innovations lost to time, perhaps innovations that allowed for finer control or greater durability. Their secrets eroded by centuries of monsoons and conquests. As the sharpening continued, the keepers paused occasionally to test the edge, running a thumb along the metal with the care of a parent checking a child's fever. The goad's point, now keen and gleaming, reflected the rippling water, a subtle play of light that evoked the river's own timeless flow. Nearby, another handler attended to a set of smaller tools, the ankusha, a hooked implement for guiding, and simple blades for trimming leather straps. He dipped a cloth into the river, the water cool and silken against his skin, and wiped away the grime accumulated from weeks of use. The cloth, woven from local fibers, released a faint, herbal aroma as it absorbed the mud, a reminder of the forests where these tools were first conceived. In the distance, the faint calls of birds echoed through the trees, their songs weaving into the keeper's work like threads in a tapestry. The sun climbed higher, warming the air with a gentle heat that carried hints of blooming lotuses along the banks. One keeper, his eyes crinkled in a wry smile, remarked softly on the stubbornness of old metal, as if sharing a private joke with the river itself. "These edges hold their secrets well," he murmured, his voice a lullaby against the steady grind. Indeed, the tools spoke of an era when Mauryan artisans, inspired by the empire's vast resources, crafted implements that balanced strength with subtlety. Excavations at Beder revealed similar artifacts, polished stones, and metal shards that suggested a network of workshops where smiths blended iron from the southern hills with techniques possibly borrowed from Persian traders. Yet for all the evidence, certain designs eluded understanding, their precise methods vanishing like mist at midday. The mystery deepened as the keepers worked. Why, for instance, did some goads feature engravings that archaeologists could not decipher, faint spirals and dots that might have been symbols for protection or balance? Unearthed relics from the era, preserved in the dry sands of the Northwest, showed variations in handle grips and hook shapes, hinting at regional adaptations lost to history. One keeper pondered this aloud, his tone light and detached, as if recounting a distant dream. Perhaps the rivers carried away the knowledge, he said, gazing at the water's flow, swallowing the blueprints in their depths. The idea lent a poetic weight to their task, transforming routine maintenance into a quiet homage to the unseen. Sensory details abounded in this ritual. The grindstone's surface, rough yet yielding, emitted a warmth under the keeper's palms, like the earth's own pulse. Mud from the riverbank clung to their dhotis, its cool, slick texture a grounding force amid the repetitive motions. The air, heavy with humidity, carried the faint bitterness of oxidized metal, a taste that lingered on the tongue like an unspoken riddle. As they honed the tools, the keepers occasionally paused to listen to the wind rustling through the bamboo, its whispers evoking the vast elephant herds that depended on these implements. Each stroke of the stone produced not just a sharper edge, but a harmony of sound, a soft, persistent hum that soothed the soul, much like the empire's edicts of peace under Emperor Ashoka. Historical echoes infused the scene. Artifacts from Mauryan sites, such as the iron tools found at Sisupalgar, confirmed the use of similar maintenance practices, where riverside locations provided both water for cleaning and stones for sharpening. These finds, meticulously documented by modern scholars, revealed how keepers might have sourced their materials from local rivers, grinding away imperfections to ensure the tool's longevity. Yet the lost designs added a layer of intrigue. For example, a fragment from a goad handle discovered in the ruins of an ancient fort bore an alloy composition that baffled experts, suggesting alloys that combined local iron with unknown additives for superior strength. The keepers, in their unassuming way, embodied this legacy, their work a bridge to a past where every tool was a masterpiece of necessity. As the morning wore on, the tools emerged renewed, their surfaces polished to a subtle sheen. The keepers laid them out on a mat of woven grass, the fibers soft and fragrant, allowing the sun to dry any lingering moisture. One by one, they inspected each piece, their movements deliberate and serene, as if lulling the implements into a state of readiness. The mystery of the lost designs lingered in the air, a gentle enigma that made the ordinary extraordinary. Perhaps in the quiet flow of the river, those secrets still waited, carried on the currents for some future hand to uncover. By midday, with the tools secured in leather pouches, the keepers rose, stretching their limbs to the sky's vast embrace. The scene faded into the rhythm of the empire's daily life, leaving behind a sense of calm continuity. And as the sun arched toward the horizon, one might imagine the next chapter unfolding, where these well-tended tools would play their part in the grand tapestry of history. In the soft glow of a 3rd century BCE Indian dawn, where the Ganges whispered secrets to the ancient earth, the elephant keepers of the Mauryan Empire stirred from their modest camps. These were men shaped by the rhythms of the wild, their lives intertwined with the great beasts they tended, not in the shadows of temples or tight-knit villages, but in the open expanses where duty met celebration. As the first light painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, they donned their festive dhotis, fabrics woven with threads of crimson and saffron, draping like gentle waves over their sun-kissed skin. Today was the day of the Elephant Keeper festivals, a time when the air hummed with anticipation, and the massive creatures, adorned in garlands of jasmine and marigold, prepared to parade through the bustling thoroughfares. The handlers moved with a quiet grace, their movements deliberate and fluid, as if echoing the slow sway of their charges. Each man had spent years forging bonds with these colossal beings, learning the subtle language of trunk twitches and ear flaps, though the festivals themselves were a rare escape from the daily toil. In those moments, the air carried the earthy scent of damp soil and crushed petals, mingling with the faint spice of turmeric rubbed into the elephants' hides for protection and shine. Drums began to echo softly in the distance, their beats like a heartbeat pulsing through the gathering crowd. Not the thunderous clash of battle, but a soothing rhythm that invited the soul to drift. Imagine the scene. A line of elephants, their gray skins dusted with powdered ochre, stepping in unison along the wide paths carved between ancient banyan trees. The handlers, in their flowing dhotis, led the way with bamboo goads held lightly, more symbols of authority than tools of force. For these beasts were partners in the empire's might. Ashoka's edicts, inscribed on pillars that stood sentinel in the landscape, spoke of compassion toward all living things. And here, in these gatherings, that ethos breathed life. The emperor's words, carved in stone for eternity, reminded all that animals were not mere instruments of war, but entities deserving of care. A principle that infused the festivals with a sense of reverence, without tipping into the sacred rites of other traditions. As the procession wound through the markets of Pataliputra, the air filled with the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of peafowl, their cries blending with the soft chatter of onlookers. Children darted between the legs of the elephants, their laughter light as chimes, while vendors offered sweets scented with cardamom and ghee, the aroma wafting like a warm embrace. The elephants themselves seemed to relish the attention, their trunks curling upward to snatch low-hanging fruits, a subtle wit in their playful grabs that drew smiles from the handlers. One might imagine an old keeper murmuring to his charge, "Ah, you greedy one, saving your appetite for the feast." His voice, a lullaby, amid the growing symphony of the day. Yet woven into the fabric of these gatherings was a mystery that lingered like mist at dawn. The unrecorded rites of the elephant keepers. Whispers among the elders spoke of hidden ceremonies performed under the cover of night, not in the grand edicts of Ashoka, but in the quiet corners of tradition. These were not the boisterous displays of the parades, but intimate moments where handlers gathered around flickering oil lamps, their faces illuminated in soft shadows. What exactly transpired in those hours remained a puzzle, passed down in fragmented tales that evaded the scribes of the time. Perhaps it involved the anointing of the elephants with herbal pastes, their scents of sandalwood and myrrh drifting on the breeze, or maybe secret gestures exchanged to ensure the beasts' loyalty and health. No chronicler had captured these rites, leaving them as elusive as the wind's path, a gentle enigma that added a layer of wonder to the festivities without encroaching on matters of faith or fellowship. The parade continued, the drums now swelling to a steady cadence, their echoes bouncing off the mud brick walls of nearby dwellings. The elephants, draped in bells that tinkled with each step, created a melody as soothing as a river's flow, their massive feet pressing into the earth with a rhythm that felt eternal. Handlers adjusted the garlands around the elephants' necks, the flowers' petals soft and cool against the warm skin, releasing a fragrance that mingled with the salty tang of sweat and the sweet smoke of nearby fires. In these details, one could sense the subtle harmony of man and beast, a dance refined over generations, far from the edict's stern inscriptions, but aligned with their spirit of benevolence. As midday approached, the sun climbed higher, casting a golden haze over the scene, and the handlers paused for a moment of respite. They shared simple meals of flatbreads and lentils, the flavors earthy and comforting, while the elephants were treated to piles of bamboo and sugarcane, their chewing a contented rumble that vibrated through the air. Here, in the pauses between the spectacle, the mystery deepened, for some keepers would slip away briefly, returning with an air of quiet satisfaction, as if they had partaken in something profound, yet unspoken. One might ponder, in a detached way, the consequences of such secrecy, how these unrecorded rites preserved a knowledge that time might otherwise erase, ensuring the lineage of caretaking endured. The afternoon brought more processions, with handlers guiding their charges through fields where wildflowers nodded in the breeze, their colors a vibrant tapestry against the green. The doties fluttered like flags of peace, and the sensory world bloomed. The cool touch of a handler's hand on an elephant's flank, the sharp scent of crushed grass underfoot, the distant hum of insects weaving through the air. Ashoka's influence lingered in the background, his edicts promoting non-violence and the welfare of animals, which the festivals subtly honored through displays of mutual respect rather than domination. As the day waned, the sky blushing with the hues of sunset, the gatherings began to wind down. The drums softened to a whisper, their echoes fading into the twilight, and the elephants were led back to their enclosures, their garlands wilting, but their spirits seemingly lifted. The handlers, weary yet content, exchanged nods and quiet words, the mystery of their unrecorded rites hovering like a gentle fog, untouched by the day's revelry. It was a reminder that not all traditions needed to be etched in stone. Some were meant to flow like the rivers that nourished the land. In the end, as stars began to prick the darkening sky, the elephant keepers dispersed, their dhotis folding back into the ordinary. Yet the essence of the festival lingered, a soothing melody in the mind, ready to transition into tales of other wonders, yet to unfold in the hushed twilight of a Mauryan camp, nestled among the ancient sal trees of the Gangetic plains. The women moved with a quiet rhythm, their saris draping like softened shadows in the fading light. It was the 3rd century BCE, an era when the empire's vast elephant corps thundered across battlefields and trade routes. Yet here, far from the clamor, the air carried only the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a peacock settling for the night. These women, the unseen pillars of elephant keeper families, tended to the rhythms of survival, their hands shaping fodder from the earth's bounty as firelight flickered across their faces, casting a warm, golden glow that softened the edges of toil. Their saris, woven from coarse cotton dyed in earthy hues of ochre and green, whispered against the ground as they gathered bundles of grass and leaves. The fabric, practical and unadorned, wrapped around them in layers that allowed for the day's labors, tying back hair with simple cords, securing tools at their waists, and shielding skin from the evening chill that crept in after the sun dipped behind the hills. One woman, her name lost to time like so many others, knelt by a low fire, her fingers deftly sorting through piles of bamboo shoots and wild millet, the air filled with the earthy scent of crushed leaves, a fragrance that mingled with the smoky tang of the flames, evoking a sense of timeless continuity in this corner of the empire. In these camps, scattered along the riverbanks, where elephants roamed in tethered herds, the women's roles wove through the fabric of daily life with an understated grace. They rose before dawn, when the first birds stirred in the canopy, to prepare the fodder that sustained the great beast's bundles of fodder that not only fed the elephants, but also symbolized the intricate balance of the Mauryan machine. Archaeological remnants from sites like Taxila reveal terracotta figurines and storage vessels, hinting at the tools these women might have used. Shallow baskets for carrying grasses, stone mortars for grinding grains into a mash that elephants favored. One such vessel, unearthed with faint etchings of leaves, suggests the precision of their work, as if each piece of fodder was a quiet offering to the empire's strength. As the women worked, the camp came alive with subtle sounds, a soft crunch of twigs underfoot, the rhythmic swish of a sickle through undergrowth, the occasional low rumble from an elephant nearby. Content in its enclosure, their movements were methodical, almost meditative, as they selected the finest fodder. Tender shoots of bamboo that yielded a satisfying snap when broken, broad leaves of the banyan tree that carried a faint, resinous aroma. Wit whispered in the way they bantered lightly, perhaps remarking on how the elephants seemed to prefer the sweeter grasses, as if the beasts had a connoisseur's taste, while the women themselves subsisted on simpler fare. The firelight danced across their saris, illuminating the intricate patterns of where faded threads from years of such tasks, a subtle testament to endurance that brought a gentle humor to their unseen labor. Yet beyond the visible duties, there lay a veil of mystery, an unrecorded tapestry of tasks that archaeology only glimpses. In the shadows of these camps, what other roles did these women shoulder? Duties that left no mark on stone edicts or clay seals. Perhaps they tended to herbal remedies drawn from the forest's bounty, mixing poultices from bark and roots to soothe the elephant's aches, a knowledge passed in whispers that evaporated with the dawn. Excavations at sites like Beta have uncovered small amulets and grinding stones, suggesting practices of healing or ritual that might have been women's domain. Yet these remain fragments, puzzles without clear edges. One can imagine them in the quiet hours, applying salves with hands calloused from fodder preparation. Their expertise, a silent current beneath the empire's grand narratives. The preparation of fodder was no mere chore. It demanded a deep understanding of the seasons and the land. In the monsoon months, when rains swelled the rivers and the air grew heavy with the scent of wet earth, the women adapted, selecting drier grasses that wouldn't spoil in the humidity. Their saris, dampened by mist, clung slightly as they moved, the fabrics weave allowing a breath of cool air against their skin. The fire they tended crackled softly, its warmth a counterpoint to the rain's patter on leaves, and the aroma of steaming fodder mingled with hints of wildflowers crushed underfoot, created a soothing symphony that lulled the camp into a peaceful haze. Historical accounts, inferred from Ashoka's pillars, and the rock edicts that speak of animal welfare, imply that such care was integral, though they seldom credit the hands that performed it. As evening deepened, the women gathered around the fire, their saris pooling around them like pools of shadow to portion out the day's yield. One might pause to run a hand over a particularly lush bundle, her expression serene, as if sharing a secret with the flames. The sensory world enveloped them. The crackle of burning wood, the earthy taste of the air on their lips, the faint glow that turned ordinary tasks into moments of quiet reflection. Subtle wit emerged in their gestures, like a knowing smile at how the elephant's preferences mirrored human foibles, always seeking the tenderest greens, as if they too dreamed of luxuries beyond the camp. In this era, the Mauryan women's contributions extended to maintaining the camp's harmony, ensuring that stores of fodder were ample for journeys across the plains. Artifacts from Chandrakhedugar, with its pottery shards depicting daily scenes, offer clues to their resourcefulness. Jars that once held preserved leaves, perhaps, or tools for weaving baskets from river reeds. They moved with an innate wisdom, their roles a blend of necessity and intuition, all while the empire's chronicles focused on kings and conquests. The mystery deepens here. What unspoken rituals did they perform, perhaps under the cover of night, to protect their families or invoke the spirits of the forest? A grinding stone found in isolation, its surface worn smooth, might hint at potions or incenses, tasks that slipped through the cracks of history, leaving only echoes for us to ponder. Through the seasons, their work adapted with a calming constancy. In the heat of summer, when the sun bleached the grasses golden, they rose early to beat the warmth, their saris light against the breeze, the air filled with the dry rustle of leaves and the distant trumpeting of elephants. The firelight then seemed a gentle reprieve, its glow softening the harsh light of day, and the women might share a light-hearted quip about the stubborn vines that tangled their paths, as if nature itself played a playful game. Archaeological evidence from the Mauryan period, such as the animal motifs on ivory carvings, underscores the cultural significance of elephants. Yet, it is the women's unseen efforts that truly sustained this reverence. As the night unfolded, with stars emerging like distant fireflies above the treetops, the women's roles wove into the very essence of the camp's survival. Their saris, now still in repose, bore the day's stories in their folds, and the air carried a final whisper of rustling leaves, a sensory lull that invited rest. In this unassuming world, the mystery of their unrecorded tasks lingers like a half-forgotten dream, a reminder that history's grand tapestry includes threads we may never fully trace. Yet, as the fire dims and the camp settles, one turns to thoughts of what lies beyond, where other tales of the Mauryan world await their gentle unfolding. In the hushed twilight of the Mauryan Empire's vast forests, where ancient banyan trees stretched their gnarled arms toward the stars, a group of elephant keepers gathered around a flickering campfire. The year was deep in the 3rd century BCE, and these men, clad in simple dhotis of rough cotton that whispered against their skin with every movement, had spent their days tending to the great beasts, majestic elephants, that roamed the empire's frontiers under the watchful eye of King Ashoka's realm. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fading strokes of amber and indigo, the keepers settled onto the cool earth, their weary bodies eased by the warmth of the flames. The air carried the earthy scent of damp leaves and smoldering wood, while the gentle crackle of logs breaking apart provided a rhythmic backdrop, like a distant heartbeat echoing through the night. These handlers, known as mahanatas in the ancient texts of the Arthashastra, were more than mere caretakers. They were the living threads of a forgotten tapestry of lore, with calloused hands that had guided massive trunks and soothed restless pachyderms. They drew stories from the depths of memory, voices soft and melodic, weaving tales that danced like shadows on the firelit ground. One elder, his dhoti frayed at the edges from years of forest treks, began with a tale of valor from the days of Chandragupta Maurya, the empire's founder. His words flowed like a gentle stream, carrying listeners to a time when elephants charged into battle, their trumpets shaking the earth as fiercely as thunder in the monsoon skies. The fire's glow illuminated their faces, etching lines of age and wisdom into the flickering light. The scent of roasting roots, wild tubers, unearthed from the forest floor, mingled with the smoke, creating a comforting aroma that wrapped around the group like a warm shawl. As the elder spoke, his companions nodded in quiet rhythm, their eyes half closed in the trance of recollection. In those days, he murmured, our forebears rode atop the great ones, not with whips of fear, but with bonds of trust, as Kaudalia's writings advise. Indeed, the Arthashastra, that ancient manual of statecraft, spoke of elephant management with the precision of a seasoned handler, detailing how keepers must observe the animals' moods, feed them with care, and even sing to them in the quiet hours to foster loyalty. Yet, beyond these practical duties, the text hinted at a deeper tradition, the sharing of stories under the stars, a ritual that bound man and beast in an unspoken covenant. The tales unfolded slowly, each word chosen with the care of a weaver's thread. One story spoke of a rogue elephant named Gajendra, who had wandered from the herd and found his way back through the cunning of a clever keeper. The narrator's voice rose and fell like the wind through the leaves, painting vivid scenes with sensory strokes, the rough texture of the elephant's hide under a handler's palm, the salty tang of sweat on their brows after a long march, the distant call of night birds that seemed to punctuate the narrative. Subtle wit laced the retelling, as the elder quipped about Gajendra's stubborn ways, comparing the beast's temper to that of a wayward prince who once challenged the king's authority. Ah, but even the mightiest must learn humility, he said with a faint smile, his words carrying a lullaby's cadence that soothed the soul without stirring unrest. Around them, the forest breathed in harmony. Crickets chirped in a steady chorus, their song blending with the soft pop of embers, while the cool night breeze carried whispers of dew settling on the grass. The keepers, their dhotis now dusted with ash, leaned closer, drawn into the web of words. Another tale emerged, drawn from the oral annals that echoed fragments of the Mahabharata's spirit, though carefully distanced from any overt religious fervor. This one recounted the journey of a handler named Virata, who had traversed the Vindhya mountains with his elephant, navigating treacherous paths where mist clung to the rocks like a veil. The story highlighted the keeper's ingenuity, how he used signals from the stars to guide his charge, much as the Arthashastra described celestial observations for military campaigns. The sensory details enriched the narrative. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the metallic taste of the air before a storm, the gentle sway of the elephant's gait that lulled both rider and listener into a state of calm. As the fire dimmed to glowing embers, the stories delved deeper into the keeper's shared heritage. One handler, younger and with a voice like a soft flute, shared a tale of an ancient migration when elephants and their guardians crossed vast plains to escape drought. He described the parched earth cracking under their feet, the relentless sun beating down like a forge, and the relief of reaching a river's edge where the cool water splashed against skin and hide alike. Through these recountings, the mystery of lost oral tales began to unfurl like a forgotten scroll. For centuries, these stories had been passed down in whispers, unrecorded in the stone edicts or palm leaf manuscripts that preserved other aspects of Mauryan life. The Arthashastra alluded to such traditions in its sections on morale and discipline, suggesting that tales of old strengthened the bond between man and animal. Yet many had vanished into the mists of time. What secrets had been lost? Perhaps accounts of elephants that outsmarted predators with human-like cunning, or keepers who deciphered the beast's low rumbles as if they were a secret language. This enigma lingered in the air, a subtle undercurrent to the night's storytelling, inviting reflection without demanding resolution. The elder paused, his eyes reflecting the fire's dance, and continued with a tale of endurance. In the shadows of the empire's edges, he said, where the forests meet the rivers, a keeper once faced a silent foe, the creeping fog that hid treacherous bogs. His words evoked the chill of damp air seeping into bones, the muffled sounds of the night growing thick and ominous. Though hints of peril threaded through, the tone remained detached, focusing on the consequences. How the keeper's wisdom, honed from generations of lore, led to safe passage, ensuring the elephant's survival for another dawn. Subtle wit emerged again as he likened the fog to an uninvited guest at a feast, lingering long after the story's end. The circle of listeners shifted, their doties rustling against the ground as another voice joined in. This handler spoke of the daily rhythms that inspired their tales, the early morning routines of bathing the elephants in river shallows, where the water's gentle lap against skin created a symphony of splashes, or the midday rests under canopy trees, where the speckled sunlight filtered through leaves like scattered gems. These moments, rich in sensory detail, formed the backbone of their narratives, drawing from the Arthashastra's emphasis on routine care to craft stories that celebrated resilience and harmony. Yet, amid this richness, the mystery deepened. How many tales had faded with the passing of seasons, carried away by winds that swept through the empire. Whispers of lost epics, perhaps detailing the elephant's role in trade routes, or diplomatic processions, remained just out of reach, preserved only in fragmented echoes. As the night wore on, the fire's warmth began to wane, its crackles growing sporadic, like a tale nearing its end. The keepers' voices softened further, blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. One final story emerged, of a keeper who, through sheer intuition, averted a stampede by recalling an old adage from his forebears. The sensory tapestry, wove in the thunderous vibration of pounding feet, the acrid smell of disturbed earth, and the eventual calm as voices and trumpets aligned in unity. Through it all, the subtle mystery of those vanished tales hovered, a gentle reminder that not all wisdom could be etched in stone. Some was meant to drift like smoke into the ether. In this serene exchange, under the vast canopy of stars, the tradition lived on, a lullaby for the soul. As the first light of dawn teased the horizon, the keepers rose, their doties stirring in the morning breeze, ready for another day. Yet, as they dispersed, one glanced back at the fading embers, a faint smile playing on his lips, as if to say that some stories, like the paths of elephants through ancient forests, lead ever onward to segments yet untold. In the heart of Pataliputra's ancient markets, where the sun dipped low and painted the dust with hues of amber and rose, the elephant keepers moved with a quiet rhythm, their doties swaying like gentle waves against the earth. These men, sturdy and weathered from years under the vast Mauryan skies, carried baskets of fodder on their shoulders, bartering not for gold alone, but for the sustenance of beasts that thundered through the empire's dreams. The air hummed with the soft clatter of wooden stalls and the distant trumpeting of elephants, a lullaby woven from the threads of commerce and care, where each transaction unfolded like a whispered secret in the fading light. The keepers, their faces etched with lines of patient wisdom, navigated the crowded lanes with an ease born of routine. Dressed in simple doties of coarse cotton, dyed in earthy tones to blend with the market's palette, they paused at stalls piled high with bundles of grass, leaves, and grains. Traders, merchants from distant corners of the empire, sat cross-legged on woven mats, their fingers tracing the edges of woven sacks as if reading an ancient script. "Ah, my friend," one trader might say, his voice a soft murmur over the ambient symphony of haggling voices. "Your fodder is as fine as the Ganges flow. But what of the price? The winds from the west bring tales of scarcity." The keeper, with a subtle smile that hinted at shared understanding, would counter with a nod, his words flowing like a calm stream. "True, the rains have been kind, but the beasts demand the best. Let us find a balance, as our kings have taught." Sensory whispers filled the space, the rhythmic clinking of copper coins as they exchanged hands, each piece warmed by the day's heat and etched with the symbols of Emperor Ashoka's reign. The earthy scent of fresh cut fodder mingling with the spice-laden breeze from nearby vendors, where cumin and turmeric danced on the air like invisible spirits. The markets of the 3rd century BCE pulsed with life, yet the keepers moved through it all with a detached serenity. Their barters, a dance of necessity rather than greed, drawing from the Arthasastra's guidelines on trade. They ensured fairness, for Caudilia's texts spoke of regulated exchanges where weights and measures were as sacred as the royal edicts. A keeper might inspect a bundle, feeling the crisp edges of dried bamboo leaves, their texture rough yet comforting, before agreeing to a deal that echoed the empire's emphasis on mutual benefit. As twilight deepened, the interactions grew more intimate, the keepers lingering at the edges of the stalls to share tales over steaming cups of herbal infusions. The traders, often clad in vibrant silks that rustled softly in the evening wind, hailed from guilds documented in Mauryan records, their caravans traversing routes that linked the subcontinent's heart to its fringes. One might recall a journey along the ancient trade paths, where the scent of monsoon-dampened soil mixed with the metallic tang of forged tools, and the keepers would listen, their eyes reflecting the flickering oil lamps that dotted the market like stars fallen to earth. In these moments, the bartering extended beyond fodder, perhaps a pouch of sesame seeds for the elephant's treats, or a bolt of cloth to mend a doughty frayed from long days in the stables. The clink of coins was never harsh. It was a gentle punctuation, like raindrops on leaves, reminding all that commerce in Mauryan India was a harmonious exchange, governed by the empire's intricate networks of oversight. Yet beneath this tranquil surface lay the mystery of unrecorded trade deals, those shadowy agreements that slipped through the cracks of official ledgers. Whispers in the market suggested that some keepers, with their deep knowledge of the elephant's needs, engaged in subtle arrangements that never reached the scribe's tablets. A trader might slip a keeper an extra measure of rare herbs, not for immediate barter, but as a favor to be returned in kind, perhaps access to a hidden watering hole, or a tip on upcoming royal processions. These dealings, absent from the Arthasastra's meticulous accounts, added a layer of intrigue, a quiet enigma that historians later pondered. One could imagine a keeper pausing, his hand hovering over a pile of golden hay, as a trader leaned in with a knowing glance, their words carried away by the soft rustle of passing carts. What secrets did they exchange? Perhaps promises of untaxed goods, or alliances that bolstered the keeper's influence, all veiled in the ordinary hum of the market. The sensory tapestry enriched these encounters, the warm press of sunlight fading into cool shadows, the faint crunch of gravel underfoot as keepers shifted their weight, and the occasional call of a street vendor hawking sweetened fruits, their aroma sweet and inviting like a distant memory. In one corner, a group of keepers gathered around a trader's display of pressed grains, the grains themselves gleaming like tiny jewels under the lamplight, each kernel a testament to the fertile lands of the Mauryan realm. See how they catch the light. A keeper might remark with subtle wit, his voice laced with the humor of one who had seen seasons turn, much like the deals we make shining briefly before blending into the night. Such exchanges were not mere transactions. They were threads in the fabric of empire, woven with the care of those who understood the balance between man, beast, and commerce. Historical echoes from Mauryan trade records painted a vivid backdrop as per the inscriptions and edicts. Markets like these were hubs of regulated activity, where tolls and tariffs ensured the flow of goods, supported the royal treasury. A keeper bartering for fodder might reference the standardized weights, feeling the heft of a balanced scale in his palm. Its cool metal, a reassuring presence amid the chaos. Yet the unrecorded deals added a whisper of uncertainty, a mystery that lingered like the faint scent of incense from a passing priest. One tale, drawn from fragmented accounts, spoke of keepers who, through clever barters, secured exotic feeds from beyond the empire's borders, spices from the south, or fruits from the eastern hills, deals that went unlogged to avoid scrutiny. Their benefits felt only in the elephants' strengthened strides during parades. As the night deepened, the market's energy softened, the bustling stalls giving way to quieter corners where keepers and traders shared a final word. The clinking coins grew sporadic, replaced by the soothing rustle of closing awnings and the distant hoot of an owl perched in the ancient banyan trees. In these moments, the interactions revealed the human element of Mauryan trade. Not just economics, but bonds forged in the shared rhythm of life. A keeper might pat a trader on the shoulder, his dhoti now dusted with the day's remnants, and say with a gentle laugh, "Until the morrow, when the sun calls us back." The mystery of those unrecorded deals, however, remained, a subtle undercurrent that hinted at the empire's unseen complexities, where not every agreement was etched in stone. Expanding on the sensory realm, one could almost feel the gentle breeze carrying the earthy aroma of the Ganges banks, mingled with the warm, yeasty scent of fermented grains used for the elephant's special treats. The texture of a trader's ledger, its papyrus like surface rough under a keeper's calloused fingers, evoked the tactile history of record keeping, even as the unrecorded deals evaded such touch. Historical examples, like the Mauryan emphasis on guild regulations, as noted in rock edicts, added depth. Keepers might draw on these to negotiate firmly, yet fairly, their barters echoing the empire's ethos of dharma in trade. As the stars wheeled overhead, the scene transitioned seamlessly into the broader tapestry of Mauryan life, where such daily rhythms paved the way for the morrow's endeavors, inviting reflection on the quiet interconnections that sustained an empire. In the soft hush of dawn,